The death of 6-year-old beauty queen JonBenet Ramsey made national headlines. The crime became a media phenomenon, much like the O.J. Simpson trial. And if losing their daughter wasn't hard enough, Jon and Patsy Ramsey also had to fight claims that they had a hand in her murder. It was the day after Christmas of 1996. The body of little Jon Benet Ramsey was found in the basement of her family's upscale home in Boulder, Colorado. At 6 years old, she was a child beauty queen, competing in pageants much like her mother, a former Miss West Virginia. Early that morning, Patsy Ramsey called police to report that Jon Benet was missing. When they arrive, Patsy shows them a ransom note found in the house. Police conduct a search but find no sign of Jon Benet. 7 hours later, John Ramsey finds his daughter's body in a little-used room in the basement. It wasn't long before police shifted their search from a possible intruder to the Ramsey family itself. The Boulder DA said Jon and Patsy were under an umbrella of suspicion. The case became a media circus, and the family was being tried in the court of public opinion.
I did not kill Jon Benet. I did not have anything to do with it. I love that child with my whole of my heart and soul.
The investigation dragged on for months with little progress and no arrest made. Jon and Patsy put their house on the market and moved to Atlanta, not far from where their daughter was buried.
You're saying that money made all the difference in this case?
Well, there's no question. From the very beginning, the family was treated quite differently than you or I, let alone a family of a minority group would have been treated. The parents were not interrogated. The detectives, the police were clearly overwhelmed by the affluence, the power, the position, the prestige of the Ramsey family. Subsequently, within less than 48 hours, they put into place a legal team that consists of some of the top lawyers in Colorado. And the chief lawyer, Hal Haddon, is a longtime personal friend and political pal of former Governor Roy Romer. So, the money, I would say that the family probably has spent in excess of $2 million for legal fees and probably more. Money did make a difference. I'm not saying in some surreptitious or illegal fashion that anybody was paid off. I'm saying money made the difference in terms of how the case was handled.
And we should remind people that you were paid by different media outlets to take a look at the autopsy reports, and you feel that the father is to blame for all of this.
I wasn't paid by different media. I've never been paid by any media in this case.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the Globe paid you a fee. Oh, okay. You did this on your own then.
They offered, and no money was ever accepted.
Where do we even begin? We touched on so many different branches of this mighty oak tree of a case. It's difficult to decide where we go from here. I guess we may as well dive right into the possible corruption within Boulder's legal system. On a handful of occasions, it was the DA, Alex Hunter, who delayed search warrants, refused to indict the Ramseys in spite of the grand jury's decisions, and otherwise seemed to obstruct various leads and theories of the investigators. Same with the Ramseys. If they truly wanted to get to the bottom of what happened, there wouldn't be so much pushback to the due process. A handful of the original team of detectives and investigators left their law enforcement career altogether. What would cause them to want to leave the whole profession, rather than just relocating to a different county? Not only that, but several prominent citizens of Boulder fled for suspicious reasons. In one case, leaving the entire continent. During the grand jury hearings, the judge presiding, Joseph Bellapani, decided to abruptly recuse himself because he urgently needed to go and teach law in Cairo, Egypt. Could it have anything to do with John Ramsey's family ties to certain islands, where children were brought for very specific sickening activities under the guise of camping trips? Alex Hunter also happened to have an extremely high rate of offering plea bargains, and was notably lenient in cases involving crimes against minors, making Boulder a safe haven for those actively committing the most heinous and revolting crimes. We're going to dig deeper into all of the perverted secrets of this perfect town, and more. So buckle up, flip on your headlamp, keep all arms, legs, and other extremities inside the cart at all times, and keep your eyes wide open.
It's a scary headline for the front page of Boulder, Colorado's small-town daily newspaper. A warning from the mother of a little beauty queen, Jon Benet Ramsey, who was murdered in her own home sometime Christmas night. Patsy Ramsey warned other parents, keep your babies close to you. There is someone out there. The parents tried to avoid cameras today. They're still in Atlanta where they buried their daughter 2 days ago. But last night, police in Boulder were shocked to see Jon and Patsy Ramsey interviewed on cable television. The police, who have now sent 5 detectives to Atlanta, have been saying the parents were too grief-stricken to be interviewed by them. The interview provided a lot of details police have refused to release. Specifically, what the parents say was a 3-page ransom note. The mother said she found it in a stairway leading to the kitchen. It was addressed, she said, to Mr. Ramsey, and the first line read, "We have your daughter." The father said the note warned, "Don't call the police." Each parent has hired a lawyer, but both say it's sickening at any hint they may be involved. Still, there are many unanswered questions. The parents acknowledge the killer must have known the house. The girl's bedroom was on the 2nd floor, but the body was left in an obscure room in the basement, and there were no signs of a break-in. It's also reported the girl was strangled with a noose-like cord and her mouth taped. Jon Benet was a pretty and very talented 6-year-old. She'd won several beauty contests. Tonight, though, it is the mystery of her death, which so many people are wondering about.
What we want out of this is not only to determine who was, but to get a conviction. And that will be the ultimate conclusion, successful conclusion of this case. And so I fully support the police department in doing whatever they need to preserve the integrity of this case so that we can achieve a successful conclusion. The second question that I have been asked frequently by the media, and frankly only once by a citizen, is whether there is a on the loose and do we need to take special precautions in the city. Certainly as parents, and I am one, we make sure that our children are safe, and we do that all the time, and I would expect parents to continue to do that. But I think that people in Boulder have no need to fear that there is someone wandering the streets of Boulder has been portrayed by some people, particularly in talk radio, looking for young children to attack. Boulder is safe. It's always been a safe community. It continues to be a safe community. And so I want to both assure the citizens of Boulder and really express on behalf of the community our appreciation for the police department, for the very thorough professional job that they are doing in order to bring this case to a successful conclusion.
What makes you confident that there's not a killer walking the streets of Boulder?
Well, several things that have been released as part of this investigation already indicate to me that, and I'm no expert at this, but that there isn't somebody who is just wandering up and down the streets looking for potential victims. Well, they reported, at least, that there were no visible signs of forced entry into the home, that it appeared that someone may have known the home well. And so that would indicate to me that there is not just a random act. And I don't think we need to worry about that in Boulder. In fact, we never need to worry about that in Boulder, and this case does not change that.
The police have come under a certain amount of criticism. At least other police departments have said they would have handled the investigation very differently. I mean, do you appoint the police chief?
No, the city manager appoints the police chief. The city council appoints 3 staff members in the city of Boulder, the attorney, the city manager, municipal judge. All other employees report to the city manager.
Do you have any concerns, though, in terms of how the police handled the investigation from the beginning? I mean, not searching the house, suggesting to the dad that he searched the house and then he finds a body. Any thoughts on that?
I have no reason to question the police at all in their investigation.
Do you have any concerns about the fact that the family flew to Atlanta and supposedly there were no Boulder detectives who went along?
No, I have no concern about that at all. And there was all sorts of, from my point of view, nonsensical speculation that the family would not come back. We know, in fact, that they have returned to Boulder, and I support the police in what they allowed. You know, I think it's important to note that no one has been charged in this case. And the Ramseys, under whatever circumstance, lost their daughter. And I would hope as a caring community, without any reason to question at that time, that we should allow parents to bury their child. And so I think the police made the right choice.
With only one homicide in the city of Boulder for all of 1996, is it fair to question the Boulder Police Department's experience ability to investigate a homicide this way?
I don't think so. Just because you have one homicide in a year, I think is actually a sign of remarkable strength in a community. It's something that we had hoped we would not have any homicides, of course, in 1996.
Have police actually told you there's no need to fear a killer on the loose?
No, I am taking that information, frankly, from a lot of the work that you all have reported in terms of what the situation was. I've not talked to the police independently by myself.
This investigation was
supposed to be wrapped up earlier.
Hold up, I can't hear two of you at once.
This investigation was supposed to be wrapped up earlier in the week. Is there any reason it's gone on this long? Do you know why it's taken them so long to wrap this up?
I don't know that a deadline was ever given. And I certainly support the police in doing what is necessary to doing a very thorough job. And it takes time, and I think we ought to give them that time and not be rushed by media or people who are looking for easy answers to complex questions.
Is there any indication the family will not cooperate with the police?
Not that I'm aware of.
Excuse me. If I could, I know you have specific questions of the mayor concerning the community, the calls that the one call, excuse me, that she has received from a citizen. That's fine. She has not been, as I have not been, briefed on a regular basis by the police department. And she is not here to answer questions about the specific of the case.
Can I ask you a question, Ms.
Yes.
Angel? There has been a complete autopsy done on this girl. Was she or was she not sexually assaulted?
The police are not releasing that information. The autopsy report released by the coroner to the public indicated death by strangulation, that it was classified as a homicide. That is the only information that is officially released at this time.
But you're not denying it either.
I am not confirming or denying.
Right now, at this moment, do police know where the Ramseys are? Specifically, not generally. Are they outside a house where they are and know they're inside there?
Police have not sent investigators to track down the Ramseys. They're aware that they flew into Jeffco early this morning.
Do they know if they're even in Colorado right now?
They have some indication they flew into the Jefferson County Airport, which is in Colorado, sometime this morning.
But they don't know if they flew on to somewhere else later on today.
They haven't been focusing on that today.
And why haven't they?
They are in the process of setting up an appointment with the Ramseys to talk to them. There's no reason to believe they won't cooperate. They've been cooperated throughout.
Are they setting that up directly or through attorneys?
I'm sorry?
Is that through attorneys or is it directly with the Ramseys? Are they talking to them directly?
We will be working, of course, through their attorneys. Leslie, doesn't it make the investigation all that much more difficult if they don't have, I mean, it's usually people with the most information about the crime, if they're not readily available to help police conduct this investigation? Doesn't that cause complications and problems? No, the police are continuing their investigation. There's a lot of activity. I mean, they're working on the crime scene. As you know, we have people in Atlanta talking to friends and family members. We're not at a standstill waiting to talk to the Ramseys. Of course, that's a very key part of the investigation. We will be talking with them. And as soon as that appointment can be set up, we will have that happen.
But Leslie, do the police routinely allow key witnesses in a major capital crime, call them and set up an appointment to do interviews whenever they feel like it?
We had no legal right to detain the Ramseys from leaving the state to bury their daughter. There was no legal grounds. They were not under arrest. Nobody has been ruled in or out as suspects. They will be interviewed at a time that's appropriate.
Who will set that time? Will they set the appropriate time or will the police set the appropriate time?
We are in contact with their attorney setting that interview up.
Have any steps been taken to protect against flight? That these people would just get in a car, get in a plane, and just leave? Go to Canada, go to Mexico?
I'm not sure what the police have done or not done in this area. To date, there has not been any concern. The Ramseys have been cooperative, and we expect that to continue.
2 weeks ago today, a violent criminal act took away from this community one of our innocents, Jon Benet Ramsey. She did not deserve to be killed, for she had done nothing in her young life to harm anyone. We are grieving as a community for our loss. I hope to use this forum as a means to aid that process. I hope to provide insight into this event that has been difficult to communicate because of the inherent conflict between the media's desire to provide all the information they can obtain and the Boulder Police Department's desire to protect the integrity of our investigation. I've had many members of this community ask me about comments indicating that there's a killer loose in our community. The question this raises, is there a need for community members to be fearful? There's no question that there's a person or persons responsible for this act who have not been apprehended. It is my advice now, as it is at any time, that we need to be vigilant with respect to persons who might do us harm. But this needs to be kept in perspective. In this country, for the last 2 years, 65% of the homicides have been cleared. That means that in 35% of the cases of murder in the United States, the person responsible has not been apprehended. The reality we all live with every day is that we have many dangerous people in this community and communities across the country who are walking the streets. We all know this intellectually. However, we never really have to deal with it until it strikes close to us. We were not living in fear before this incident, and we cannot be forced to live in fear now. It is the best judgment of the Boulder Police Department that this is a one-time occurrence. The killing of Jon Benet does not appear to be linked to any other similar event. What this means is that we do not believe we have a serial situation to deal with. Should the Boulder community be concerned and vigilant? Yes. Should we be living in fear? No. Can I guarantee that this will not occur again? No, I cannot. There have been many stories and much speculation about who killed Jon Benet. This is an area that I know will be explored in greater detail in the questions to follow. Let me offer a perspective on this issue. Prejudging and media hype have never solved a crime. Crime solving requires diligent and careful police work. That is exactly what the Boulder Police Department is committed to doing. It is a natural response to a tragedy like this for the community to want to know immediately who is responsible. It is often an effort to assure ourselves that such a tragedy will never happen to us. The reality of the situation is that often these types of investigations take time to solve. The integrity and the competence of the men and women of the Boulder Police Department have been challenged. Let me first say that I have never had the privilege of working with more competent, dedicated professionals. They are getting the job done. We will not lose the focus of this investigation to respond to meaningless and unfounded remarks. This organization is well respected in our community. That respect has been earned over many years because of the level of competent service we have provided. Again, it is unfortunate that those who have anointed themselves as experts have seized the opportunity to offer criticism which has no basis in fact.
I have a theory. I do feel that an associate of her father, and her father may know who it was, some kind of blackmailing. Or I also felt there was something within the family unit that was not right. But I also feel there was something in the area that was bothering children at that time. There may have been some kind of serial killer in the Colorado area. So it was like, yes, a vibe inside the home, something was going on, but initially someone did come in, and I think they from the outside.
With Alex Hunter. Alex Hunter's plea bargain rate was about 97%. You imagine, and I'm not prosecutorially biased, but can you imagine that every 100 people who were charged with one crime or another in Boulder County, that only 3% of them went to trial? I mean, anything, Alex Hunter should have been a criminal defense attorney or a public defender, not a district attorney.
So firstly, District Attorney Alex Hunter, who, as you may know in the first video, which if you haven't watched, I highly suggest doing so first, Alex Hunter and former chief of the Boulder Police Department, Tom Kobe, were accused of potentially being part of some kind of child SA material ring, a story that was quickly hushed. There was also a front-page article by The Star, which led to a $25 million lawsuit filed by the Ramseys that was only the beginning of using Burke as the shield and deflection from crucial information regarding John and his company, Access Graphics. This one particular Star article, which I've literally scraped the entire internet from top to bottom, And for the amount of holy grail type documents and media I've been able to find regarding other videos with related subject matter, a great deal of money must have been spent to make it evaporate into the netherverse. It could just be a rumor that was referred to and reported by multiple sources who have been covering the story since the dawn of the day. But this article titled Jon Benet Dad, linked to Kitty P. Scandal, dated April 29th, 1997, alleged that child essay material had been discovered on Access Graphics company computer drives. Access Graphics had 25 distribution hubs spread out across the U.S., as well as their Amsterdam location. John made numerous business trips to France and the U.K. It had been suggested numerous times from various sources that there was essay material of Jon Benet circulating the internet and underground media circuit. How these sources could have known this without being guilty of a crime themselves, who knows? Can't really hang our hats on mere claims without proof. But this is obviously a sticky situation for investigative journalists without the cooperation with law enforcement. And well, in this case, it seemed all of those who should have been the most helpful participants were the most uncooperative. Stephen Singular, who wrote the book Presumed Guilty regarding the darker edge of child beauty pageants and the blurred softcore lines, had taken to investigating this possibility further, with what seemed to be in cooperation with Alex Hunter. But it was strange to be more cooperative with a journalist than with investigators. It's possible that Stephen was able to provide some valuable leads in his conquest, but whether or not they were pursued would be left to law enforcement. In this interview between True Crime Garage and Stephen Singular and his wife Joyce, they discuss the dark underbelly of the pageant circuit and how that could relate to Jon Benet.
Regarding these child pageants, were there any types of licensing laws, standards, or regulations for the pageant circuits or franchises?
Well, we're not experts in that area.
I don't believe there were. I could be wrong, but we
certainly haven't seen any of them anymore. I mean, but then after that, there was, on reality television, you saw the rise of these toddlers and tiaras and those types of programs. People are oddly fascinated with that subculture. Dressing young girls up with false eyelashes and big hairdos, and it's kind of a strange world.
When the case began, and we began looking into the online stuff, 97, there were 5,000 worldwide child sites. By 2000, there were 100,000. People simply don't realize how much of this activity was going on, and that it wasn't just a sexual underground, but it was business, as Joyce alluded to earlier. There was money to be made from creating images, selling images, manipulating images, and all of that.
Think how much more money, say, a photographer could make if they were doing illicit things online as opposed to just doing portrait photography or pageant photography, kitty photography. But then what if they, some of them had some sort of second job online, altering images digitally and buying and selling. That's a much more lucrative business now.
Our idea was never that Randy Simons was involved in the crime, but like others, he had knowledge of some of the things that we're talking about, and may have, well, he obviously was connected to it in some very tangible way, at least later on.
And also, two private investigators that we worked with that were prominent in this case, Lou Smith and Ollie Gray, both told us that they thought that there was some sort of photography or videography involved surrounding the case. They didn't go into much more detail because private investigators are notoriously closed-lipped about what they share with you. They usually want more information than you get back from them. But they both said that to us.
Yeah, they both had access to all of the evidence, which obviously the public doesn't. And that goes back to the grand jury, which had access to all of the evidence in the case, which was massive. What led them to those conclusions, to the conclusions that they reached? The public doesn't know that, and it's hard to imagine that they didn't have access to some of this kind of information.
Well, but didn't Ollie Gray even say to us that there was, once he started looking into this in Boulder, there was a lot of sexual subculture going on?
Yeah.
As there would be in most cities. Every city would probably have some sort of deviant, dark, sexual subculture going on.
And as time went on, we heard about parties in Boulder involving children, and then after parties involving children. And this, again, raised a whole number of questions. And we heard about, fairly prominent people participating in these things. And there is no place around more conscious of its image than Boulder, Colorado. Very liberal, very affluent, very educated, very, politically correct, etc. They don't want that image defiled.
As you can see in these pages from Singular's book, Pam Griffin, who designed Jon Benet's pageant dresses, and whose daughter both babysat for the Ramseys and helped teach Jon Benet her choreography for pageants.
Other people who were close to the Ramseys agree, including Pam Griffin, who made some of Jon Benet's pageant costumes.
Anyone who knew her could never have harmed her. That's why I feel it must be someone who was not within the family or who did not know her.
Griffin's daughter befriended Jon Benet. She helped teach Jon Benet dance steps and even babysat for her.
I'd pretty much grown out of babysitting, but I never passed up an opportunity to spend time with her. She kept a smile on my face.
Admits that the photographer Randy Simon, who had the whole portfolio of Jon Benet and sold it to media after she passed, had approached Pam about photographing her daughter Christine in the nude when she was a child. And yet, it was well known that he was one of the best for many pageant mothers in that region. It wouldn't be out of line to suggest that he had approached many mothers, and that some would agree to this. Brooke Shields' mother, for example, took payment to allow Playboy photographer Gary Gross to shoot the then 10-year-old Brooke nude and provocatively in 1975 for the magazine. In 1983, 17-year-old Brooke went to the state's highest court in an attempt to have the photos removed from circulation, which was denied. Brooke had also been exploited in film, being cast in several highly suggestive and adult-themed movies, same as many other young stars that rose to fame in the 80s and 90s. This was likely the shoot that many of the photographers like Randy referenced when approaching pageant mothers or whoever their main clientele already were. Once they got the ball rolling and each photographer started having their own portfolios with this kind of material, they could then show the mothers and could say, so-and-so's mother allowed me to photograph her daughter, look how tasteful and artistic, or whatever twisted sales pitch they would give. As Mark and Joyce had mentioned, the sale of this kind of material on the side for these types of photographers and videographers was a lot more lucrative than the regular material. Many erotic and other kinds of inappropriate for children films were made featuring non-adult actors, as if there was some kind of agenda to normalize hypersexuality and promiscuity.
What am I bid, gentlemen? Don't we get a look before we buy? Kids, you can look all you want. Just don't break the merchandise. Hey, how do we know she is a virgin? Have I ever lied to you before? Satisfaction guaranteed. Well, gentlemen, I'm getting impatient.
I'll bid $100.
Yeah!
I'm bidding $120. 150. Okay.
Paired with the glorification of adult film stars and street work. Pretty Woman, for example, woefully misrepresented and softened the reality of such a profession. Randy was arrested in 1998 for indecent exposure after strutting around in the nude in public and voluntarily exclaimed his innocence to police in reference to Jon Benet. He was later arrested for child essay material charges, but not until 2021.
Randy Simmons had came in and he was smelling of alcohol, which wasn't really anything new. And he came in and got his mail and chit-chatted for a bit. He was upset at something, but I didn't go into too much detail with him. And he left, and next thing I know, he's streaking down Main Street.
Naked.
Naked. No clothes, no shirt, no, nothing. And he was running around, and I'm just going, okay, need to call the police.
How often would he talk about
somebody coming after him? Quite a bit.
And when did this start? I mean, how long before the naked incident?
I think it was right after he moved into town. He was telling us that, you know, different people, that somebody was out to get him.
And did he say what?
No, not really. He did tell me lots of times he took Jon Benet Ramsey's pictures because she was such a pretty little girl. And he had other pictures up in his wall, up in his house, but I didn't pay any attention who they were. They were just beauty contestants. And he had them up hanging.
And most of them were of young girls?
The majority of them were probably young girls, yeah.
Around Jon Benet's age at the time?
Well, he liked to do the little kids' pageants because he had several of those all over.
And did he ever, what else did he say about Jon Benet?
Well, that she was pretty, and she said, and he kept telling me somebody did it, but it wasn't me. And I said, well, are you a suspect? Because if you are, you can go back to wherever you came from. And he said, no, I didn't do it. I just took pictures of her. He just gave out a lot of little hints for people in town.
Who, Randy? Mm-hmm. What sort of hints did he give?
Oh, you should see them. They're so pretty. I wonder what they look like. You know, photographed, you know, just going.
I wonder what they look like what? Now?
I don't know. He would just say, I wonder what they look like photographed. And I didn't ask anymore.
Other kids in town?
Yeah. Oh, he said they were all beautiful. And I kept my little one across the street. She never was anywhere around him.
Did you just have this sort of mother's intuition then that
yeah.
something off?
He was a little off.
So we know for certain that Jon Benet had at least one shady character in her sphere that had a predilection for minors. And he was her primary photographer. Had Patsy allowed Randy to shoot and market inappropriate photos of Jon Benet, which began drawing a lot more attention from similarly inclined individuals, such as Mark Carr and Gary Oliva, online? If so, what would be the likelihood that this would progress to film, and then graduating to paid requests online? This would be the only logical explanation for how many men claimed to be present and aware of what happened that night, but were confirmed to have physically been elsewhere.
Tonight there's a new report spreading worldwide on social media about the decades-old investigation of Jon Benet Ramsey. A man in prison claims he killed her by accident. His name is Gary Oliva. Take into account we have reported on similar claims before. Boulder police say they are aware of his potential involvement in the case. Tonight, the Daily Mail out of London reports the 54-year-old wrote a letter to a friend making a confession, and the paper claims those letters are in the hands of Boulder police. Oliva is serving a 10-year sentence for possessing child pornography in Boulder.
Well, it is certainly a headline that grabs attention. It says, I, Jon Benet. It appeared today in a British newspaper, but this, of course, is a story that needs plenty of context.
This news story surrounds a man who has been linked at least tangentially to this case for years. Jon Benet Ramsey was assaulted and strangled over the Christmas holiday in 1996. And over the past 2 decades, police have looked at numerous potential suspects. One of them was Gary Oliva, who was looked at as far back as 2002 and got renewed interest a couple years ago when he was busted in a child case in Boulder. He's serving a 10-year prison sentence now in that case. Today, the Daily Mail reported that it had obtained letters allegedly written by Oliva in which he confessed to the murder. But we found those same letters have been the subject of other stories for more than a year. And today, Boulder police told us there were no new developments to report in this investigation. And Kim and Tom, we should point out, this is a case that has generated a lot of breaks over the years that turned out to be questionable. You'll both remember that a man named Mark Carr confessed to Jon Benet's in 2007, only to later be ruled out as a suspect.
And that case just blew up on a national and international scale. So
yeah, they called that big press conference to talk about his arrest, and then they ended up announcing there that he was no longer a suspect.
It's a case that had run cold for a decade. The unsolved
26-year-old beauty queen Jon Benet Ramsey. But now, in an instant, it is once again red hot. And here's why. The arrest of 41-year-old John Mark Carr. In a bizarre twist, while he was being paraded before cameras, Carr actually responded to reporters' questions, admitting that he Jon Benet Ramsey.
I love Jon Benet. Died accidentally. No.
What happened in the last few months? Were you playing with her? What happened?
Her death was an accident.
In the basement?
Yes.
Can you tell us about your connections to the Ramsey family?
No comment. Thinking about it.
How did you get into the basement and play with her?
No comment.
And how do you feel now? How are you doing?
I'm being treated okay.
How long had you known Jon Benet?
No comment on that.
The break in the case came when investigators tracked Carr to Thailand after learning of emails he was sending to Michael Tracy, a University of Colorado professor who was making a documentary about the case.
Well, I think the history of the track record of the police in this case is not great. So no, I didn't go to the police. I went to the DA's office.
Authorities trailed Carr for 3 weeks, even photographing him in front of his Bangkok home, and eventually linked him to a warrant in the U.S. stemming from a 2001 child case.
John Mark Carr, 41 years old, was arrested for the murder of Jon Benet Ramsey yesterday morning at approximately 6 a.m. in Bangkok, Thailand. He began his employment as a second-grade teacher in the international school system in Bangkok on Tuesday morning of this week.
It was an announcement that was 10 years in the making. Could this be the event that would remove the umbrella of suspicion that had covered the Ramseys for a decade? But despite all the excitement surrounding Carr's arrest, his confession may raise as many questions as it answers. Law enforcement is now encouraging people to exercise patience and caution.
There have been no charges filed at this time. The analysis of the evidence in this case continues on a day-by-day, on an hour-by-hour basis as we speak.
An analysis that will surely examine the apparent inconsistencies in Carr's dramatic confession.
I am so very sorry for what happened to Jon Benet.
In off-camera comments recorded by the AP, Carr restated his claim that Jon Benet's death was an accident.
And it's very important for me that everyone knows that I love her very much and that her death was unintentional and it was an accident.
But the crime scene points to anything but an accident. Jon Benet's body was found beaten and garroted, locked in a basement room. And Carr claims to have written letters to the Ramsey family, but John Ramsey told Barbara Walters that he had never heard of Carr.
Did you ever hear of the suspect? Do you have any idea how he knew your daughter?
I don't, Barbara. And I had not heard of him, so I don't know. And I don't know, we don't know certainly that 100% certainty that this is the guy.
And what about that ransom note demanding $118,000, the exact amount of John Ramsey's bonus that year? Did Carr have access to that kind of information, or was it just a coincidence? And then there's the question of whether or not Carr was even in Colorado at the time of the murder. His ex-wife told a reporter from behind a door that she and Carr were together on Christmas 1996 when Jon Benet was killed.
Where'd you spend Christmas of 1996?
Either in Alabama or with family in Atlanta.
His father's neighbor in Atlanta remembers Carr being there around the time of the...
Just a normal, fellow that had worked in teaching, and John and his wife were a very normal, nice young couple.
But perhaps the most striking inconsistency in Carr's claims may be what a senior Thai police officer says Carr also told investigators, that he drugged Jon Benet before having sex with her the night she died. Yet autopsy reports obtained by ABC News show no sign of drugs in Jon Benet's system.
There is much more work to be done. now that the suspect is in custody.
It is safe to say this case is still far from closed.
It never fails to grab attention as soon as you say there's any development in the Jon Benet Ramsey case. It also brings out skepticism, people thinking that at this point, any lead has already been gone over.
Right, and in this case, Gary Oliva is a man that was looked at by Boulder police at least 16 years ago, and we don't know everything they've done over the years, but they have never reached a point where they thought he was a viable suspect.
All right, Kevin, thanks.
Some of you have told me that you understand exactly where Chief Kobe and I are coming from. And of course, that place is wanting to maintain a special integrity in this case, a case like we have never seen before, a case like I don't think any of you have ever seen before. Integrity. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as we proceed through this dialogue to some extent with you. That means we don't want to prejudice this case. We don't want to see happen to this case what I have seen happen to big cases here in Boulder. Sam Shepard, problems with the Laura Jaquette case in terms of media, and problems that you all are aware of as journalists that have impacted the community, the public interest over time. We don't want that to happen. But we know that keeping it so close to our vest has made your work very difficult, has made it tedious, has frustrated you. It has resulted in part in small leaks becoming big pieces of news that have taken the front page from time to time. And I have to say to you, or given an emphasis, if not on the front page, that probably is not accurate in terms of where we are, where we're going, what we're thinking about. We don't like making your jobs difficult because that probably comes back to get us. You guys have the barrel of ink, we have none. But I know enough of you that I have worked with for a long time to know that we are all zeroing in on the same thing, that we are looking for the truth and we are looking to do justice in this case. And that's what Chief Kobe and I are going to continue to do. And we hope that you will understand that when we say things, we're trying to think about what we are going to say and its impact on the viability of this case.
Good afternoon. Is this the world famous Gary Oliva?
World infamous.
What famous? Infamous?
Infamous.
Oh.
That's the cross between insane and famous.
Hey, I'm recording this, okay, just for the prosperity. And for
no, not at all.
Yes, and for any media known to exist now or will ever exist in the far-flung future. Okay? You got it?
Okay.
Okay, good. Okie dokie. Hey, how was dinner?
It was okay. It was taco salad.
Oh, not bad.
As they call it.
Oh, everything I cook turns into tacos. I love tacos.
I like tacos.
Look, I got one of your letters. I'm going to open it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm going to open it. Ah. Oops.
Is it the ranch dressing one?
No, what's the ranch dressing one? What's that about?
It isn't. I forget how I worded it. I came up with it. I wish I could have gotten a job at your advertising agency that you worked at.
Oh, wait. It says, Dear Jon Benet. Dear Jon Benet, don't let the miles between us keep our love apart. And it's got a rose.
Oh, yeah. You're still getting those. I went through a little period of those.
Okay.
And then that's when she told me to tell you.
Meditation instructions. Oh, it's a whole bunch of stuff. I'll have to read this later. I mean, how often? I don't get to talk to you that often, so. Well, how's everything going?
Well, you said you were interested in meditation.
I am. I just can't read it right now.
You don't have to stress over it.
We got a 20-minute phone call. We got a 20-minute phone call. We got to make the best of it. I might as well open another letter, right? Do I have time?
Yeah.
Should I?
Yeah, and,
Taco
yeah,
salad.
okay.
Taco salad. That sounds delicious.
Well, it's not the kind of tacos I like.
I hate to say, whoa. I was about to say I'm going to join you for lunch, but you're talking about taco meat, cannibalism.
What kind of meat?
Are you talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here we go. Cannibal confession. Oh, I just got the cannibal confession letter. I feel like I won the lottery. It took me 38 years to find out the truth about my my old high school buddy. He's a little bit into cannibalism, but I'm so glad you're honest and stuff.
Well, that's why I had a almost near nervous breakdown after I told you because I was worried.
Nah, don't be worried. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. I'm going to have to read this later too. Wait, there's 2 pages. It goes on. Oh, that's a lot of. Okay, I'll read that later. And then there's some sort of are these like tattoos? They're like little girls, but they're oh wait, what's this?
Are they being cooked?
Oh yeah, now they're being cooked. Holy moly!
On an open flame?
I don't know if I can show this. Let me see.
See, that's what I told you. Now you're gonna go.
No. This one, I mean, it's really.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Gory.
Show this.
No. I just didn't know. I didn't know. Betty Stew. I mean, that's almost like a tattoo. Look, I really like your art. I'll be honest with you. It's like you're really pushing the limits. You're pushing the boundaries of art, and you're sort of like in your own, like you're a Banksy of your own. You're an Andy Warhol of cannibalism, I guess you would say. Would you not?
Well, he was into the Campbell soup cans. I'm into the.
You gotta agree that you do have some real good talent there. I mean, and besides, you never actually ate anybody. We've talked about that. You never actually ate anybody. It's just a thought that you have.
But I need to. I desperately need to. I guess I need it. I crave it.
I'm like, what? But there's no little kids in jail, luckily. I mean, at this point.
I just want to talk and let the world decide. And if they can surmise that from listening to my conversation now, then at least I know I've just done the best I can. I can only just be myself. And that's just a label that just doesn't apply to me. But that's what I believe. And I don't want to do anything but just present myself as myself and let people decide from listening to me talk, this is my first chance, because all they've gone by is what other people have said.
Favorite authors of yours?
Can't say that I really have a favorite author.
Favorite movie of all time?
I love children's films. The Secret Garden. It's one of my favorites.
Favorite actress then?
Mostly child actors and actresses are very impressive. I've worked a bit with children in acting and singing, and would love to have pursued that as a career, possibly.
Your first wife, she believed she was drugged by you.
No, that's outrageous. Not true. I think that was said of Michael Jackson as well, about this whole drugging thing. And I think what happens is that sometimes, especially when there is a media blitz like that people just start throwing out everything in the mix.
Is your empathy, is it tied to having suffered with your mom? In other words, she tried to hurt you. You forgave her?
Oh, of course. I mean, sure. I was with my mother for 4 years of my life, the first 4 years. Okay? My memory of her is very vague. I was taken out of the home quickly. I wasn't exposed to her long enough for it to affect me. I just think that sexuality is controlled and driven by the law, by legalities, and by the psychiatric community. I got a beef with the psychiatric community. Children don't deserve to be, number one, disenfranchised from their own body. If they want to come up to me, sit in my lap, kiss me, and stick their tongue in my mouth, then if that's what they want to do, I've got two choices: to say stop and traumatize them because they wanted to do it. Okay, they're allowed to take their tongue and lick an ice cream cone, and they want that ice cream. And I'm sorry to say that ice cream is probably worse for their health than my tongue is. Where does it stop?
Right.
I mean, where does it stop? I guess my feet, and then you've got people who are into feet.
There are people who are into feet.
Okay,
whose
well,
energy is focused on their feet, sexual energy.
I know that. I'm like that. I've got some of that in me myself, but not for anyone. But feet are about. I've already been into the mouth of hell. I was negotiating deals with the DA because we're talking about the death penalty. I mean, I was fighting for my life. It got to the point where I was fighting for my life. And I changed some things around to save my life. And so at this point, shall I open up Pandora's box again and allow them to just gobble me up and take me back? No.
Well, a lot has changed, definitely, since last summer. Last summer, I was working in a beautiful school, and I've been a teacher for 10 years. And so now I'm not. And things are quite different, but it's really nice to be surrounded by family and friends and special people in my life.
How do you support yourself? Are you able to work because you made such international headlines almost? I mean, are you able to get a job after that ordeal?
Not yet. I'm not.
How about your personal life?
My personal life is much more quiet than it used to be, of course. My work was a big portion of that, and I don't have my work right now. Hope to have that again. But I've met a very special girl who's helped me get through this time, which it was difficult.
You say you're going through a difficult time now. Why is it difficult? Or what makes it difficult?
Well, the response sometimes can be difficult that I get from the public. When I do go out, there are times when it's not positive. It can be negative, and that's difficult for me because I don't know what a person has in mind for me past shouting obscenities. So no one's ever tried to physically hurt me or harm me in any way.
How does your girlfriend handle this?
I think she handles it really well. She stays by my side. She offers her support after it happens, makes me feel better about it. The best thing that I can do is just to continue to think from this point forward. What can I do to have things like they were? I would like that very much. I just have to keep faith that things will change.
How did you end up in Thailand? Out of all the places in the world one could go, you went to Thailand.
I've been living abroad for 5 years, and I've lived in Europe and Central America and off the coast of South Africa, different parts of the world, and that just was my next destination. I'd always been interested in Bangkok. And so I went to Bangkok and liked it quite well. It was a place that had lots of job opportunities. And I got a job in a beautiful international school. I was so happy with my job. I did not intend to leave Bangkok for at least another 2 years.
Why did you like the job?
It was an international school. It was a grade 2 position.
What does that mean? You mean second grade?
Right,
okay.
Right. And I'd done second grade in the past. I'd done second grade in Honduras, Central America. I really liked that. I liked the grade level. I had a beautiful classroom. It was probably the most beautiful classroom I've ever had. And I just spent 3 weeks decorating my classroom, putting up posters that I'd made by hand, and I just had a beautiful classroom, a beautiful class. You know, the students were wonderful. I just started the job. I wanted to be there for at least 2 years and had intended to be there.
Any reason why second grade as opposed to high school? Do you ever teach older kids, or you like little kids, or why second grade?
Well, I was professionally trained to work in the elementary grades, mostly the early childhood grades, which would be like K through 3. And I enjoy teaching children to read, for instance. It's one of my favorite subjects. And then I got involved with teaching children English a bit. But most of the time I worked in international schools or bilingual schools where I taught the same as I did in America.
You know, the whole sort of mystique around it, or discussion around it, is whether you've got some sort of unusual or unnatural attraction to children, or I don't know how to politely put it. How do you respond to that?
That's not correct.
Never did anything funny with a child, anything, any unnatural, ever touch a child inappropriately?
No.
You were in Thailand. At some point you got arrested. Was it a total shock to you? All of a sudden one day someone knocks on your door, or did you have wind of it?
No, it wasn't a total shock at all. I mean, it was a surprise because I didn't turn myself into law enforcement.
So you knew somebody was looking for you?
Not necessarily. I mean, I was having discussions with a professor at University of Colorado at Boulder, and from time to time when we talked, I had a feeling that he might be possibly communicating with law enforcement. But
did you talk to him on the phone, or was this all by email with him?
It was a combination of phone conversations, email correspondences, and some writings that I'd been doing and submitting to him.
How do you find him, or how do you find you? Because you're in Thailand, he's in Colorado.
Yeah. I was in Paris in 2002, and I ran into a man who worked for the Daily Camera, Michael Sandrock, and he lived in Boulder. And he started talking to me. He gave me his card. We were just having a conversation about writing, I believe. And I looked at his card and I said, Boulder, Colorado, that's a beautiful city. I've been there. That's a beautiful place. And of course, he started talking about the Ramsey case. And he mentioned a man that he'd met in Colorado in Boulder, Michael Tracy, who had expressed his feelings that he thought that her parents were innocent and they were being mistreated. And I said, I'd like to talk to that man. You know, I'd like to meet this person who's saying those things.
Just curious, or because you knew something?
I guess a combination of the two.
And so he said, I'll hook you up with this person?
Yes, he did. He just merely gave me an email address. But he said he had coffee with him on a regular basis and that he was quite passionate about his feelings about the Ramsey family.
When were you in Boulder, and were you living there or just passing through?
I've passed through several times.
Why Boulder? I mean, I know it's a beautiful town. A lot of people pass through, but why for you?
Nothing, no reason. It's like passing through any other place. I've passed through a lot of places.
Did you ever spend any time there?
Some.
What do you consider some?
I don't know. Not very much time.
More than a week?
I wouldn't say more than a week, no.
So more of a holiday type thing passing through?
Somewhat, possibly.
What do you think about Boulder?
I think Boulder is a beautiful little city, and the people are very friendly. They remind me much of people in the Southeast. They're very hospitable, and it's just a friendly little place. It seems to be a peaceful place and wholesome, and just it's a nice city. I've always said wonderful things about it, even when I was living abroad. If I met someone from Boulder, I'd always say, "Oh, what a beautiful city!" And it is. It's a beautiful city. I still don't have any hard feelings about Boulder. And the way I was brought back to Boulder was negative, of course, but I don't have any hard feelings. I still love Boulder. I think it's a wonderful city.
Ever see the Ramsey home?
In Boulder, of course.
How do you happen to see it?
I've just seen it on several occasions.
Physically, not just on TV or picture?
Yes,
you've been to the home?
Of course, yes.
Have you ever been in the home? No answer?
I don't think that I can answer that, no.
Whether you've been in the home?
Yes.
Why can't you answer whether you've been in the home? Just no answer.
Right.
How about, were you in Boulder before Jon Benet was found dead, in the weeks, months before that? I mean, do you have a long enough history in Boulder, as I'm asking?
Yeah, I've been there before that.
How about the time that she died?
Well, I think I've responded to that in the past on the record, so I don't think I really feel like responding to it again.
We've moved to a little different stage, we feel, in this case, this investigation. Things have narrowed for us, and we think we are now at a point where we can begin to have more conversation with you, but within that framework that I have just mentioned and that I spoke to when we had the press conference in the Globe Matters. The challenge for an old prosecutor like me, given the cases that we have watched recently, is to do it right, not to use tricks, to seek out the best of the best to work on this case, because this is not Tom Kobe and Alex Hunter's case. No, this is the case of the people of Boulder, the people of Colorado, and certainly without exaggeration, the people across this country who this case has touched and who call me, and I can tell when they call me that they are full of emotion, that tears are often on their cheeks as they talk about the loss of this child who was really our child.
People would rather not believe that these kinds of perverted live streams exist, let alone acknowledge the existence of what's called hurtcore essay material and red rooms, which are essentially paid request snuff live streams. These dark corners of the internet are still considered to be urban legends, and yet there is rock-solid proof that they exist. One of the most prolific operators of such live streams and websites was named Peter Scully, who was indeed convicted for such crimes, and is most well known for the creation of one of the most infamous videos of this variety. I don't even want to tell you the title of this video, let alone describe its content, but that one video alone cost $10,000 per view, and we're talking the late 90s, early 2000s. So that was a lot more money than it is now. You can look them up and find out more for yourself if you so choose, but viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Peter Scully is finally in jail, likely never to walk free again.
So when you were on the run, how great was the urge?
Urge for what?
To find young girls.
Hardly ever had an urge. It's not like a hungry dog that's got to feed every 3 hours or 4 hours. It's not like that.
So to sit down then opposite Peter Scully was to sit down opposite somebody that you can't quite believe can be so evil and so debauched and can cause so much damage and pain.
What we're interested in is whether you have any remorse, whether you admit to what you've done.
Of course I have remorse.
Why, of course?
Well, you think people don't have remorse?
No, I'm asking you as somebody who is a repeat offender here, who went on the run, who's only here because you've been caught, not because you turned yourself in. At what point do you actually feel sorry for what you've done? Is it at the point where you're captured?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. That's a good question. Well done.
What is the case against Peter Scully?
There's two cases in the Philippines. The first case is the slavery, the fact that he's kept 2 young girls in a house and actually abused them, tied them in dog chains and allegedly made videos of them. That's one case. The second case involves the holding of young victims and abusing them, and then it went to violence against the young victims as well as abuse, and then unfortunately and horrifically ended in the death of one of the victims.
That was an incredibly confronting story because of the age of the children involved and the level of debauchery against them and the number of people involved in it. The prosecutor wanted me to look at the videos before I interviewed Peter Scully, which I actually refused to do. And I think many in the Filipino media did see it, and one of my colleagues saw some of the videos. And I just made the judgment that once you see that, you can't unsee it. And what I was imagining was bad enough.
The acknowledgement of the existence of such a video really only reached MSM news outlets when it was found to be in the possession of Josh Duggar, the eldest son of the ultra-faith-driven family that had their own TLC reality show for many years called 19 Kids and Counting. Rather than getting him the help that he needed when it was revealed he had been inappropriate with his younger sisters as a teen, he was sent off to a faith-based work camp. And the problem clearly persisted, and to such a dangerously explicit degree.
Joshua Duggar is charged with receiving and possessing child pornography. He's accused of downloading and possessing material that depicts the sexual abuse of children under the age of 12. Prosecutors told Judge Brooks in a pretrial hearing today that Duggar admitted previous child molestation when he was 14 years old to his father Jim Bob and family friend Bobby Holt. While the prosecutors want to use Jim Bob and Holt as witnesses, the defense argued Joshua's behavior as a child isn't relevant evidence to this case.
So we know all of this definitely exists, and in many cases with either the enablement and or complacency of the parents of these child victims. So is it really all that crazy to suggest that it is possible that something within the same realm was going on with Jon Benet, and that things went too far? We already know John Ramsey and his close friend Fleet White had been accused of crimes against children, and that films were made. But let's take a closer look at where John comes from, and any other questionable ties that may accompany him.
Tonight, our look into the cold case of the Oakland County child killer takes us on a road trip to North Fox Island in northern Michigan. Police were investigating a child pornography ring on the island back in 1977. Now, just months after 3 Oakland County children were killed and just weeks before another, Timothy King, was abducted.
The pornography operation was run by a man with ties to Metro Detroit, and police were anxious to find out if he was involved in those serial killings. Kevin Dietz joins us now with more on that. Kevin.
Yeah, one theory in the Oakland County child killer case is that it was part of a group of wealthy pedophiles who were trafficking in child pornography and groomed underage kids who became victims. A massive investigation led to 2 people, Frank Sheldon of Grosse Pointe, who owned much of North Fox Island, and Jerry Richards, a teacher in Port Huron who recruited young boys to fly to the island on field trips.
John Ramsey's father, James Dudley Ramsey, had been the commissioner for both the Nebraska and Michigan Aeronautics Division. He was who had approved and oversaw the airstrip that had been constructed on North Fox Island, as per the request of Francis Sheldon, the owner of that island. Sheldon was a wealthy Michigan businessman who came from an upper-class family. He went to prep school in New York and graduated from Yale in 1950. He also served in the Michigan Air National Guard in the Korean War. His father was the governor of Michigan and served as the Secretary of War. In 1960, Sheldon outbid the state government for North Fox Island and allegedly set up an elaborate child essay and essay material ring in connection to Brother Paul's Children's Mission. He also took part in the YMCA's Big Brother program to procure disadvantaged victims. Here's some insight from a convicted predator named Jack Reynolds about how he identified and selected victims, which shares a common thread with those heading these type of massive operations.
How did you get them alone?
Grooming. I would check out their family situation. I would check out their clothing to see how well they were, financially. I would check out their social interaction with other kids. When we were on the ballparks or on the gym floor, I would make sure which ones I wanted to. I would give them special attention, congratulate them, talk to them when I know that I would never be allowed to talk to anybody else. Aside from everybody, I would give them the attention that an official is not supposed to give anybody. And it made them feel like, wow, he's paying me attention. It is a direct form of grooming.
Were there certain characteristics that you looked for in children before raising them?
In children, yes, but more I also looked at their families. If I thought the father was a threat, I would not approach the child. If I thought that the child had friends that he would tell, I would not approach him. If I thought the child had friends that were in the same capacity he was, I would approach him. For the simple fact that if I could miss him, I could lure him into believing, grooming him into believing that he would enjoy it. And therefore, I could manipulate him into having his other friends come and be molested by me as well.
Francis Sheldon was born into wealth and prominence. His father was a real estate developer who built Rosedale Park and Grosse Pointe Farms, I believe.
His family was very wealthy and owned major properties in the city of Detroit. He had property on North Fox Island, and we accessed the information about him through the school teacher that was arrested by the detective sergeant in St. Clair. He would fly friends and males that were interested in interacting to his property on North Fox Island.
Had a filming operation there and had, horrible, horrible things.
Frank Sheldon was introduced to us as Mr. Richard's uncle. This is my Uncle Frank. So, okay, well, this is Frank, and Frank owns the island and whatever, and we're,
I remember getting on the plane, I was so excited. Me and Mike, and there's two other kids. I think one was a grade above us, and one was a grade below us, if I remember correctly. And I remember landing. I remember getting our stuff, getting our cabin, and, within an hour, we were naked on the beach. That's just how it was. If you live on an island, this is how they do it, in islands. So. And there's cameras, a lot all over the place, really.
It's just because of the trust and innocence that children have, and for someone to steal that away from them, you're basically taking part of their life away, and it's not fair.
I was angry at the school, because how could you hire this man and bring him into our school? So a lot of mixed emotions. I'm not afraid to tell the story now. Even as a grown man, you got that little boy inside you that doesn't want to tell anybody. That little boy died a long time ago.
The peak of this operation was between 1976 and 1977, and nearly led to Sheldon's arrest. However, he fled to France, married a local to obtain citizenship, and later relocated to Amsterdam, where he was able to continue his activities without the threat of U.S. authorities until he passed in July of 1996. The connections between this case and 4 Oakland child deaths between 1976 and 1977 were made, but this too is a long-term unsolved cold case.
Yeah, one theory in the Oakland County child case is that it was part of a group of wealthy pedophiles who were trafficking in child pornography and groomed underage kids who became victims. A massive investigation led to 2 people, Frank Sheldon of Grosse Pointe, who owned much of North Fox Island, and Jerry Richards, a teacher in Port Huron who recruited young boys to fly to the island on field trips.
Now, a new book explores whether a cover-up has kept this case a mystery all these years. For 4 decades, detectives, victims' families, reporters, and filmmakers have all tried to learn the truth about the Oakland County child case. Now, another book explores the horrific murders of 4 children along the Woodward corridor that terrorized the community from 1976 to 1977.
I wanted to get as much as I could, as close to the truth about what happened to these kids as I could.
Keenan documents the King family's quest to expose the lead into a key suspect. 11-year-old Tim King was the last known victim of the child, and his father, Barry King, has tried for years to find the truth about what happened behind the scenes in this investigation.
Both of you ladies have been enormous help to the family of Tim King.
In 2006, the King family unearthed the lead into Christopher Bush, a 4-time convicted pedophile who was polygraphed about the case and let go by law enforcement shortly before Tim King was abducted in 1977.
I'm convinced he was involved.
The 7 investigators were the first to reveal Bush's autopsy report after he allegedly killed himself inside his family's Bloomfield Township home. Keenan tracked down the cops who were there that day in 1978.
It definitely looks staged, and I don't know anybody that looks at that scene and thinks that it was suicide. I talked to investigators who were at that suicide scene who said, yeah, we thought this was our guy.
Keenan says her book contains evidence that law enforcement covered up the Bush lead, but she does not say Bush was the...
We know for sure that he was involved, but by no means do we know that he was the killer.
My own reporting has shown over the years that part of the reason detectives moved on from the Bush lead within the last decade was because of stronger scientific evidence on a man named Arch Sloan. DNA evidence from 3 hairs that have been found link Sloan to the case.
Now we've learned new information comes from a man who won't reveal his identity.
And he is someone 7 Action News investigator Heather Catallo has spoken to many times. And Heather, who are we talking about?
Well, that's the problem. We don't know. Nobody seems to know. What we do know is that this source started contacting me back in 2010, alleging that these murders were related to cult activity and pagan holidays. But we never went with the story because he's provided absolutely no proof.
After decades of mystery, police still don't know who abducted and 4 children along the Woodward corridor between 1976 and 1977. Some families of the victims have waged a public battle for information from Oakland County Prosecutor Jessica Cooper. Christine Mihalik was the Oakland County child killer's 3rd known victim, and now her mother is weighing in with a $100 million lawsuit filed in federal court.
The system has not only failed Chris, but has failed all the victims of the monster that took our kids from us. It's time for Jessica Cooper to step aside and let the Department of Justice investigate these cases.
At a press conference in Detroit today, Deborah Jarvis and her attorney Paul Hughes revealed that their lawsuit is based on information from an unknown confidential source who's been nicknamed Bob.
Have you met him?
I have never met him. I would know him if he was sitting in this room.
Do you know his real name?
I don't know his real name.
Based on the material Hughes included in the lawsuit, it's believed Bob is the same person who was contacting me anonymously in 2010. He said he could prove that there were more than just 4 victims of the child. And Bob wrote up this detailed memo alleging that the victims were abducted and their bodies were discovered on dates that were connected to pagan holidays. Bob claimed the killings were tied to Satanic cult activity in Metro Detroit. The problem was Bob would never provide a name or any information about himself or a phone number so that we could verify what he was saying.
If he was some crazy dude, he'd just be out there posting it all over, or he would be turning the matter over to the Oakland County prosecutor. He wanted one piece of information, essentially, to confirm what he basically already knew before he was going to put an individual out there as a suspect. And that, my friends, is integrity on his part.
There are evils in this world that good-natured people cannot even fathom. And where there is demand, there is supply. In some cases, the parents are complicit in these crimes, due to how lucrative the business can be. I would suggest you check out the documentary called Eyes of the Devil by Patrick Vega, who infiltrated a network of those willing to sell their children with no regard for the potentially evil purposes for which they were being obtained, for further insight into this cold hard truth. There was literally a couple just this past summer who were on a camping trip with their children, and at one point in the night, after running out of booze, had propositioned a neighboring campsite to trade a 6-pack for their infant child. There's no need to make up any crazy stories when it comes to this sphere. However unfathomable or incomprehensible, there are millions of children going missing every year worldwide, and that's just the ones being reported. How many are bred or sold into captivity, obtained from third world countries that have no documentation? Anyways, let's not get too off course here. I just need you all to understand the depths and extremes of depravity that we know exists, so we can review cases like with Jon Benet with more awareness, knowledge, and critical thought. Many believe that not only was she being essayed, but that there was material being made, and that this was how John Ramsey and his company were able to reach $1 billion in sales in a single year. On one hand, it's been speculated that the direction of the video went too far, and her death was an accident, as per the claims of the convicted predators who came forward wanting to take responsibility, while others believe that it was intentional, for either ceremonial purposes, for profit, or both. We know BDSM exists, we know snuff films exist, and we know child essay material exists. We also know a combination of this twisted niche material exists. With the Jon Benet case, my gut and instincts have always suggested that something far more sinister than what was discovered and discussed in the media was taking place. So let's go deeper. Not only did John Ramsey have family ties to North Fox Island, but if you remember, in part 1, we briefly touched on the possibility that Patsy and Jon Benet had been sold into covert military operations. That similarly to Kathy O'Brien's father, this was how John was able to obtain such high-value national defense contracts, as well as allowed him access to the specialized military-grade software that would allow for a highly encrypted web space that could host and broadcast illegal materials, as well as terminate all evidence of such a web space with the click of a button. There had been that article in the Star where the author had allegedly received the information from an insider that child essay material had been discovered on Access Graphics computers, but either they never investigated this, or by the time they had a chance to, there was nothing to find. Or it was never there to begin with, but with all things considered, and with very little information about what kind of national defense contracting work Access Graphics was responsible for, it seems all the more likely that John Ramsey had a similar arrangement as Kathy O'Brien's father had with the government. There were several parallels between what Kathy O'Brien alleges she experienced in a covert military program and key elements of the Jon Benet case.
Jon Benet Ramsey was very much a part of the same MK Ultra structure that I was, especially with her father being in Michigan. There's documented evidence of my father and John Ramsey on the same boat to Beaver Island, which is up by Mackinac Island, Michigan, where the kids are taken and where programming occurs and all like that. So we had those parallels. And it was also in Mackinac Island, Michigan, that I met who would be my owner in MK Ultra Mind Control, U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd. Mm-hmm. Senator Byrd was from West Virginia. He was in office for over 50 years. We need term limits.
Yeah, which is insane. Like, how does that even... come on, right? Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%.
And Patsy Ramsey was Miss West Virginia. So she was MK Ultra. She was under Byrd's control. We've got so many parallels that are already unfolding right here.
Yes.
That by the time the Ramsey case broke, it seemed like maybe this one was going to tip the scale and people would wake up to what MK Ultra.
And they should have. And they should have. Like, come on now. That if that wasn't enough, like, why are we, but it's better late than never, right?
Yeah, but then again, it was in the investigation of the Ramsey case and everything else, the attorney Alan Dershowitz said that no justice would ever be served and people wouldn't even get to know the truth because national security had been invoked on the case.
Yeah,
national security was invoked on my case when I was just a little bitty child and my father was caught sending child pornography of me through the U.S. mails. This was like 1960. So already national security was covering up these crimes against children to allow for the proliferation of. So it was no surprise that the same methods that have been going on all these years were still being used on the Ramsey case. So taking it to the next level, by the time the Michael Jackson case broke, since he was in the same MK Ultra Mind Control Project Monarch that I was, the same years that I was, I thought, oh, this is the one. This one's going to break. No. And it's just the cover-ups continue. We still don't have we need the list of the Epstein Island visitors, but more importantly, we need to know who are the puppet masters holding these blackmail videos and what's their agenda, because that is key to everything. And that is what's going to unravel this whole new world order
To review, as mentioned in Part 1, there had been a stun gun instructional video found at the Ramsey's residence, and it was said by Alan Dershowitz that any details regarding that tape were sealed under national security.
In a crucial part of his theory, Smith believes the intruder got JonBenet from her bed by incapacitating her with a stun gun, a small battery-operated device designed to fend off attackers. Smith says the killer then took the child to the basement.
I believe he brought her down to the farthest, deepest part of that basement and did very brutal things to her.
These autopsy photos provided to NBC News show that JonBenet had two distinct sets of marks on her face and back.
Stun gun marks are very specific, very specific. Once you know what they look like, it's not hard to distinguish what they are.
Speculation about a stun gun has been swirling around ever since JonBenet was. The Boulder Police Department has neither confirmed nor denied its use in this crime, but the department did ask Dr. Michael Doberson, a forensic pathologist and coroner, to study the marks on JonBenet.
Unless some other evidence is presented to me, the most likely explanation for those injuries is that they were caused by a stun gun.
And Lou Smith uses these photos to further advance his theory. This man, whose body was exhumed, was confirmed to have been stun-gunned on his face, and this young woman was stun-gunned on her face as well. He says their marks are similar to the ones found on JonBenet.
You have to explain the fresh marks on JonBenet, especially on her face. They weren't seen in any of the Christmas photos or any of the photographs taken that day of JonBenet. This is a very important clue left behind by the killer, Katie. You just can't throw a clue like that away.
Smith says there aren't many other explanations and does not believe they were caused by buttons or snaps, as others have theorized.
Not only do the marks on the back look like each other, but they're a certain distance apart, approximately 3.5 centimeters apart. The marks on the face are approximately 3.5 centimeters apart. What are the odds of having two sets of marks on a person just by randomly laying on an object, say as a button or anything of that nature, or a snap?
There is no evidence the Ramseys ever owned a stun gun, but hundreds of thousands of Americans do. More than 600 police departments use them, and they're easily available at gun stores and on the internet. They don't need to be registered. And Lou Smith says he did extensive research on the weapons. He found one he says would most closely match the marks on JonBenet, an air taser gun applied directly to the skin. Some people aren't very familiar with stun guns, certainly don't know the noise they make. And so I'd like you to show us if you could.
First of all, the stun gun does make a lot of noise.
So how could the Ramseys sleep through that? Lou Smith says he now knows because he conducted tests on anesthetized pigs.
Until we got to the actual experiments with the pigs, we didn't realize that a stun gun, when it's applied right directly to the skin of the pig, that the noise is very muted. This is what it sounds like when it's against a pillow. It's very muted when it's against the skin. That's what it sounds like. And even more so when it was on the pig.
But as much as Lou Smith believes his stun gun theory is relevant, he says it certainly didn't win many converts at the Boulder Police Department. So why were people so hesitant about accepting this stun gun theory?
I suppose it's because it didn't fit into the promoting the Ramseys did it part of the equation.
Some people have called you a delusional old man.
I'd like to look at it as being a seasoned investigator.
Kathy has suggested in her book, Access Denied for Reasons of National Security, that the stun gun video was very likely the video that she'd been used as the demonstration subject, titled How to Create a Mind Control Slave Using a Stun Gun, which was performed by Michael Aquino, a high-level military agent who specialized in psychological warfare. He who has also been mentioned by other survivors of this elaborate military operation that splintered the minds, bodies, and souls of countless individuals.
It was an evil spirit.
Yeah. Well, they were all evil, weren't they?
Hear now the legacy of the priesthood of Set. In the Diabolicon of the Age of Satan is recounted the primeval sundering of the cosmos from mindless
And it's
unity.
precisely that evil spirit that Aquino and his wife honour and invoke as he ordains their first British high
Joining in
priest.
consecration with one who is now to be ordained.
David
to
Austin,
his
who's
eternal
never been
priesthood.
accused of any crime, is an ex-member of the National Front and now a chef.
His high priest upon earth, name you to our fellowship.
He's been a Satanist for 20 years and will now head the Temple of Set in Britain on behalf of the Aquinos.
And of beauty.
But in San Francisco, we discovered that Michael Aquino is not all he seems. For a start, he's a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army and a specialist in psychological warfare, holding a top-secret military security clearance. Army investigators here at the Presidio base in San Francisco have now formally accused him of ritually abusing young children from the base's daycare center. Indeed, one young girl says she was horribly abused by both Michael and Lilith Aquino at their nearby home.
A U.S. Army chaplain made an accusation of child centering on us at the Presidio of San Francisco at a time when my wife and I were living 3,000 miles away in Washington, D.C.
But we have a copy of the police report, and the child appears to have identified you.
That's not true.
But as the police report shows, and the Aquinos know full well, the victim of that attack did identify them both as her abusers, to her parents, to her therapist, and to the Army.
I'm glad you mentioned the John Walsh thing too, because that is one of those cases, and it didn't even make it on my notes, but the Adam Walsh case, the McMartin preschool thing, the Hampstead,
Yes.
Presidio, that's another good one. Yeah, and well, then Michael Aquino keeps coming up, and in a time when people didn't have that access to information the same. So how is everyone getting a story together from opposite sides of the country? Well, how do they all have the same, saying the same things? The same people keep coming up, right? So
that's the good news. It is the same people over and over again. It's not that we share the planet with that many evil, dark, negative energy force perpetrators, as that they have been sneaking in for a long time below our radar, distracting us over here, sneaking in over here until they can appear to be more of them than there are. It's like the Wizard of Oz, when they pull back the curtain, he's just in there pulling the levers, and it's just really the reality of it. It goes back to the same people over and over again. Aquino was my primary mind control programmer and used the occult trauma as a trauma base. And he used the same thing on the military. He used it at the Presidio daycare scandal and traumatizing all those children and just kept getting away from it. I've got
Franklin case too.
The Franklin case at the same time.
Yep. Sorry, continue. I'm
I'm
just remembering too. I'm like, oh yeah, there's that one too. The list goes on though, right?
Yeah, and then there were as people were waking up, because they were waking up, they saw the CIA was involved in cocaine ops, especially that, and then the crack cocaine, and then they knew about Bill Clinton's MENA cocaine operations. They knew about these things back then because they were blatant, they were in our face, and they were being covered up.
Yeah.
So people were waking up, and every time they would take a stand against this globalist agenda, they'd be re-traumatized. We had the Oklahoma City bombing, Waco, Ruby Ridge, the Unabomber. Then, of course, 9/11 was a big one. But all of these were done deliberately to traumatize the population, because our conscious mind freezes in fright, leaves our subconscious wide open to being easily led and manipulated. Without a conscious mind filter, there's no question, there's no reason, there's no conscious comprehending, there's only absorbing information in, especially if it's a repetitive media narrative. 9/11 brought us into war. Everybody.
War on terror. And the terror is coming from the inside, and we don't even see it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
The terror was within us, and we didn't know how our brains were responding to that terror. Now, once we understand it, we have a defense against it, because then we safeguard our free thought going forward.
Kathy also alleged that her father, Earl O'Brien, and John Ramsey had been on a manifest together for a ferry ride to Beaver Island. Beaver Island is apparently one of many locations in which various forms of this diabolical programming takes place. John Ramsey had also visited Mackinac Island on his honeymoon with his first wife, Lucinda Pash. This island, Kathy alleged she had been brought to by political figures to help further an evil agenda. John and Patsy Ramsey's involvement in Freemasonry on both sides has also been speculated. Freemasons have historically had deep ties to military and defense industries, and the presence of Freemason symbolism has been truly compelling. The checkerboard floor pattern in the Ramseys' home, for example, and for one of JonBenet's pageant dresses. It was also noted that Patsy Ramsey's father, Donald Poe, had specific symbolism on his gravestone, which indicated that he was a high-ranking member. Donald's father, and Patsy's grandfather, was buried in the Cairo Masonic Cemetery in West Virginia. The Ramsey home was also less than 10-minute drive to Boulder, Colorado's main Masonic temple, located at 2205 Broadway Street. Some have also speculated that on top of the ties District Attorney Alex Hunter had with John Ramsey and his lawyer, Michael Bynum, that they may have all been members of the same Masonic lodge, but there's been no evidence to confirm that. It is also believed that not only due to the military involvement and some evidence being sealed for national security, but that this brotherhood may have had a part in what caused the case to be intentionally botched. Between the mishandling of the case and the obstruction of due process by those who should have been the most interested in serving and obtaining justice, there was also some unknown entities sent to harass and terrorize those who were making the most effort. Many were also given gag orders, preventing them from speaking publicly on what they saw, heard, and experienced, including the 911 operator, Kimberly Archuleta, and the Special Victims Unit investigator, Linda Arndt.
You were talking about lab results and waiting for stuff to come back, but how close are you to an arrest?
There's no timeline we're putting out at this point. Police don't have specifics on that. Obviously, they want to be successful in this case. They are continuing to investigate it professionally. They want an outcome that's going to be successful in court. They'll take whatever time they need to see that happens.
Leslie, based on your comments about the DA's involvement and some other comments you made in your statement, it makes it sound like you are anticipating an arrest.
This is normal police procedure. The DA's office works with the Boulder Police Department in the preparation of the case. They would do so in any case, and they are providing normal assistance in this.
The search warrant been asked for or executed. Do you still consider this a kidnapping since the bargaining chip, the body, was left behind at the scene?
Police have not ruled out the kidnapping aspect of this, but as we have said from the point at which the body was found, they are focusing on this as a homicide investigation.
Has a search warrant been asked for or executed of the business, Access Graphics?
I don't have that information.
How can you say, Leslie, that you don't have any suspects on one hand, and on the other hand say that there is not a killer, a serial killer of children out there on the loose? I know you've covered this before, but people out there are afraid.
We can certainly understand people's concern, their emotional concern and involvement in this case, especially people who were friends and neighbors of the Ramseys. But the police have continued to say that, of course, Boulder is a town of 96,000 people. People should take normal precautions that they took a year ago or a month ago. You don't leave your children unattended. You don't let them sit in the car alone. These are normal precautions. And we certainly would suggest that people continue this, but they don't feel that there is a particular concern that Boulder is any more or less safe than it was a week ago or a month ago.
Why not?
I don't have anything further to add on that.
There are reports of a convicted file in the neighborhood. Can you confirm?
I cannot confirm it.
Leslie, is there confidence on the part of the police department that this will be solved?
The police are confident that they are conducting the most appropriate investigation possible. They want an outcome, as does the public, and as does this community, and obviously as do you, that will be successful. It would be, I think, irresponsible to predict the future. They will continue to the investigation properly.
Will the older that you're taking a high priority, it is not a priority to talk to the parents, and yet you're taking the time to be detective to send them to their vacation home in Michigan. Why such an interest in this family's vacation home if you don't even think you want to talk to the parents?
I think that's not quite an accurate portrayal. Police have been working on setting up an interview, a formal interview with the Ramseys, and they will continue to try that. I'm sorry?
Why go to Michigan then?
They are doing background, collecting information, talking with people, and following through on a thorough investigation.
The father claims in his rush to see if JonBenet was still alive, he moved the body, carrying it upstairs. The position of the rope around her neck and a second rope around her wrist also changed. And he says he ripped the tape off his daughter's mouth. The murder and the mystery around it is capturing worldwide attention. Reporters from Australia are in Boulder. British newspapers and television are carrying the story, and the tabloids will too in their next editions. In yet another unusual twist in this unusual and tragic case, the police chief in Boulder will talk to the community, but his words will surely be heard around the world. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, Boulder.
That was January 9th, 1997. That evening, Boulder's police chief defended his department's handling of the case and asked the media to back off. It didn't happen.
They've decided to tell their story. This is a live appearance for the Ramseys. Okay, police are there. Friends come over. What happened to Burke? Does he stay asleep, or do you wake him up and send it? What happens to Burke?
Burke was in bed. We got him up. Don't remember what time, but we had him go to a friend's house. I told him his sister was missing.
Told him the truth.
Told him the truth. We didn't try to make it as easy on as we could, but he cried immediately, so he knew something seriously was wrong. And he went to a friend's house.
Now, what are you doing, Patsy? You waiting for a phone call from the kidnapper? Is that what you...
Right, yes. By that time, Linda Arndt had arrived, Detective Linda Arndt, and she was introduced to me by the first officer, French, who was there. He said, Mrs. Ramsey, if my child were missing, I would want Detective Arndt looking for her.
So she came over.
Yes.
So the FBI get called in.
We were told the FBI was called. We kept asking, where are they? Why aren't they here? They were told, well, they're on their way. It takes a couple hours. And they, of course, they never came.
Kind of the toughest part of all, John. How do you find your daughter?
I found her after Linda Arndt asked us to go through the house, look for anything out of ordinary, out of place. And I found her in the basement.
Where?
She was in a room that probably originally was a coal cellar. It was a 4 concrete walled room. I knew instantly when I opened the door that I'd found her.
You know she was dead?
No, I didn't. I had this rush of just, thank God I found her. Her hands were tied. She had tape over her mouth. I removed the tape immediately. I could feel that her skin was cool. And I feared the worst, but I still held out hope that she would be okay.
Now, with the police officer in the house at that time, why didn't you you picked the child up, right?
Yes.
Why didn't you call a police officer to come right over and take care of her? I mean, that's what
child. I loved her.
Instinctive reaction.
Where were you, Patsy?
I was upstairs with
You
friends.
told Patsy?
I don't remember the sequence. I picked JonBenet up. I carried her upstairs.
The police officer didn't complain about that?
No.
No, because usually...
It all happened so fast.
I found my daughter.
I
wasn't going to step back and say, oops, I'm not going to touch this. This is a crime scene. I'd found my precious daughter. And thank God I found her.
Did you try anything to revive her?
I took the tape off her mouth. I tried to untie her arms. They were very tightly bound. I couldn't get the knot undone. And then I picked her up and I just screamed. The kind of scream you scream in a dream when you're trying to speak, but you can't. It's just a scream.
Did you see her too?
I heard him scream.
You never saw her?
Yes, I did then see her. Mm-hmm. My friends I was in the TV room and I said, what is it? What is it? And they kept, holding me. Wait, I don't know what it is. One of our friends ran in-to the room and said, we need an ambulance. Tried to dial 911. And I kept screaming, what is it? What is it? And, then in just a couple minutes, then I walked into the living room.
What did the police say? Did they say anything? Did they?
Well, Linda Arndt was the only police person that was there that I recall.
They all had left. The others had left.
Well, I don't know. There were a lot of people there.
It was a blur
throughout the morning.
Yeah,
It was a blur. We had victims advocates there. We had uniformed police. We had detectives. People were in the kitchen making sandwiches. I mean, it was chaos.
People fingerprinting. There was fingerprint dust
The
everywhere.
evidence crew was there.
Little zoo-like.
It was a little zoo-like. And when I brought JonBenet up, Linda Arndt knelt over her and I guess felt for her pulse and looked at me and said, "She's dead."
Did you ever think, because what can you think at a time like this? Why would someone send a ransom note, kidnap someone, and then kill them and leave them in the same house?
Well,
if the purpose is to get money.
Larry, this person is a madman. It's a monster. They don't think logically.
Pedophile?
We think it was a pedophile. We think it was a male. There's several key pieces of evidence that we think will lead us to the killer. Male, pedophile. We think a stun gun was involved, so this person either had a stun gun or had access to one. The number 118 had significance to this person. 118,000 was the amount of the ransom note. That was picked for a purpose. We don't know what the purpose is. SBTC meant something to this killer. That was how the ransom note was signed. And this person was in Boulder, Colorado on December 25th. We're not looking for a needle in a haystack.
If it was a pedophile, was your daughter sexually abused?
I don't think there's conclusive evidence of that.
We don't know.
Have you talked to the medical? Did they send you the autopsy reports?
No. The police have not talked to us at all. We don't know what's been done. We don't know who's
questioned you, right?
Oh, we've questioned this extensively.
But they haven't told you anything about, you have not seen a death certificate?
No.
No.
You don't know how your daughter died?
Well,
we do. She was strangled.
That's the cause of death.
That's the cause of death.
But you don't know if any sexual activity took place?
It's not clear to me that there was. We don't know. It's one of those questions you don't want to know the answer to, frankly.
And I see John Ramsey carrying JonBenet up the last 3 steps from the basement. And my mind exploded. And everything that I had noted that morning that stuck out instantly made sense. And JonBenet was clearly dead. Then she's been dead for a while. I ordered him to put JonBenet down. I knelt next to her and I leaned down to her face. And John leaned down opposite me. And his face was just inches from mine. And we had a nonverbal exchange that I will never forget. And he asked if she was dead. And I said, yes, she's dead. And I told him to go back to the room and to dial 911. And as we looked at each other, I remember, and I wore a shoulder holster, tucking my gun right next to me and consciously counting, I've got 18 bullets.
Why did you do that?
Because I didn't know if we'd all be alive when people showed up. I said everything made sense in that instance. And I knew what happened.
Do you think your fear was well-founded?
You bet I do. There's no doubt in my mind.
To this day?
Never wavered.
You were afraid because you thought the killer was still in the house.
I knew it.
Absolutely?
Absolutely.
1:10 p.m., Detective Arndt moved JonBenet's body from the hallway to the living room.
John Ramsey came back into the living room. And he grabbed a throw that was on the back of a chair. And he says, could you please cover her body? And as he's saying it, he's already put the blanket on top of her.
Arndt would later be harshly criticized for 2 key decisions, asking John Ramsey to search the house and allowing John Ramsey to place the blanket on JonBenet's body.
You had to know that that was going to contaminate evidence.
JonBenet's body was in and of itself a crime scene. Would it be nice if John hadn't found JonBenet? Absolutely. And would it be nice if he hadn't put a blanket? Yeah, it would be great. And it would be nice if there were other people to help control and keep people away. That would have been wonderful. But that's not the circumstances that I had available that day.
Still alone in the living room with John Ramsey, Arndt then heard Patsy Ramsey's voice.
And I heard a wail, just a guttural moan, aching wail from the back area. It's probably one of the most pitiful things I've ever heard, and anguished. And I saw the rest of the people, the Patsy and the pastor and the 4 friends, come from the den towards the living room. So I said, if you want to say goodbye to Jon Benet, this is the only time you'll have to do it. And, there's just so much. There's so much pain. And I called 911. I gave my radio number. And I said, the kidnapping has turned into a murder.
This house had suddenly become a homicide crime scene.
Oh, it became hell. Jon Benet was brought up at about 5 minutes after 1. And at 10 after 1, nobody'd shown up. And I looked out the window to the street and I saw an ambulance slowly drive by. And I thought, I am in the Twilight Zone.
Meanwhile, the pastor led the Ramseys and their friends in prayer in the living room, holding hands as Jon Benet's body lay before them.
I thought that would be the best way to organize everyone, to keep them distracted, to keep them from touching Jon Benet, and to keep them focused on something other than looking at Jon Benet.
1:20 p.m., after 3 hours as the only officer on what Arndt calls an incredibly tense crime scene, and 20 minutes after Jon Benet's body was found, backup finally arrived. The next day, the autopsy on Jon Benet was conducted. Linda Arndt was there.
I hadn't seen savagery done to a child or even an adult until the doctor peeled back her scalp and saw that horrific fracture to her head. It was the length of her head.
It was 8.5 inches long, and there was something else even more disturbing.
She had trauma to her vagina.
What kind of trauma?
It would be trauma that would be consistent with injuries seen in sexual assault cases.
Recently?
I guess the best way to say that was what was seen was not a first-time injury.
The coroner, in fact, said the evidence was inconclusive, but ABC News has confirmed that 3 medical experts who consulted for the Boulder Police Department concluded the injuries were consistent with prior sexual abuse. As the Ramsey investigation dragged on for weeks, then months, and then years, the criticism of Linda Arndt's actions that December day continued. But she still defends her actions, saying she has become a scapegoat for a flawed investigation. And Linda Arndt remains convinced that she knows who killed Jon Benet Ramsey. She will not say the killer's name, but has no doubt that justice will never be done.
Do you think this person will ever be indicted, will ever be charged or convicted?
No.
What you're saying is, whoever killed Jon Benet will get away with murder.
Yes.
Well, back with the Ramseys, you almost immediately became suspects. You know why? Or the public perception of suspects.
Well,
was it because of the bathing, because of the...
No, I think the tragedy...
Way before that.
The tragedy of this investigation wasn't ended on December 26th. Linda Arndt, the lead detective that was there, went on national television a few months ago and said, I knew the father did it because I saw it in his eyes on the 26th. I didn't act right. I was too calm, cordial.
How did you react when she said that?
It was a bit incredulous, but it also illustrated the bias we were dealing with from the very beginning.
Right. But do you think that had something to do with the fact that your daughter entered pageants.
I think the decision was made at that time. Picture. At that time, Detective Arndt didn't know JonBenet. She didn't know.
When did the public first see pictures of JonBenet in her outfit?
I think that wasn't until after the first of the year.
Well, that's a week later.
I really don't know exactly.
But don't you think, John, that caused a stir in people?
I think
most people say, I wouldn't have my child do that, even though many do.
Many do, and it was a wonderful thing that Patsy and JonBenet enjoyed doing together. It was certainly misinterpreted, I think, and it's one of those things that the eyes of the beholder.
But it led to those stories, jealousy.
But that was several days afterwards. I mean, we know Linda Arndt made up her mind, and the rest of the Boulder Police Department, we believe, made up their minds the 26th of December.
Oh, there was us.
You know, that it was the parents.
Is that because they found no entrance into the house?
We don't know.
Well, we know, Larry, that a window was open. Under that window was a suitcase, as if a step to get up through it. We learned later that they found a door open, which I didn't know about until almost a year later. That house
there
was
a
not
lot of evidence. The police that were there the morning of the 26th, taking evidence, have a lot of tangible evidence. They did a good job at collecting evidence. We have fibers, we have DNA, we have a lot of evidence. Problem was that then they did not take the evidence to where it would lead.
Why did they think it was you?
Because the police always go after the parents. And we understood that after
the death of a child?
Absolutely. 100% of the time.
You go, really?
Absolutely.
Well, I think, in every case, parents are always suspected initially. And at first we were aghast at that, but then we understood that we needed to be investigated.
The police
they stopped there. They didn't go on.
The police say that you would only, you put guidelines up to the interviews. You'd only be interviewed together. Why?
I don't remember.
Is that not true?
I
don't remember.
You didn't give them any guidelines?
The only guideline I remember, the only request that we made, and this was after a huge gap of mistrust developed. The police withheld JonBenet's body for burial to try to force us to submit to their terms. The three of us be interrogated in the police station before we buried our daughter. And we were horribly offended at that. And this huge gap of mistrust developed.
Let me tell you what develops in this as a father and what other people say. And the reason that I think that you're under this cloud. Most people would say, if I didn't do it and my daughter, I'm talking as a father, and I don't like to bring myself into it. One, I'll answer any question. I'll take any test. I'll meet with you. I'll be there first thing in the morning. Catch the killer. I'd go nuts. I'd cooperate in every way. I'd go out with the cops. I'd give them my fingers. I'd give them five.
We did that, Larry. We did do that.
We met with them on the 26th. We met with them on the 27th. We gave hair, blood, fiber samples on the 28th. We left.
We stayed in Boulder, Colorado. We stayed there for testing for,
Why did they say you were uncooperative? Or some?
I don't know. This is what we need to do is get down to the objective here. The objective is to find the killer. I can say a lot of things about what the police didn't do, and they can say a lot of things about what we didn't do. But let's put that aside. Let's put politics aside. Let's put egos aside. There is a dangerous killer loose, we believe. This killer, if he's still alive, will kill again. It's time to get on with that.
You're worried for your other boy?
Yes, I'm worried.
Worried for neighbors?
I'm worried for this entire country. There is a killer walking around out there someplace. Lou Smith tells us that we can...
Detective, right?
Lou Smith is the only homicide investigator that's ever looked at this case.
And he says definitively that there is enough evidence to find this man, but the public needs to know it. It's been.
Why were the police not once?
Why wouldn't they?
Oh, I think the police are passionate.
That it's you?
They're passionate that it was one of us.
Soon after the Jon Benet Ramsey, her parents had hired lawyers, a media consultant, and a former FBI agent with a national reputation as a criminal profiler. NBC's Chris Hansen talked to him for Dateline in January 1997, just over a month after Jon Benet's death.
I've sat down across a table from some of the country's greatest liars in the world, really, and I can sense it. And things just did not fit. The crime scene data just doesn't fit.
John Douglas, the pioneer of criminal personality profiling, is offering the first insider's view into the Jon Benet Ramsey murder investigation. Douglas was called into the case not by police, but by lawyers retained by the little girl's parents.
Why did they hire you? They hired me to basically do an independent analysis in the hopes of determining who was responsible for the death of the daughter. And I said, I will give you an independent analysis, but you may not like what I have to say.
And that's because when he arrived here in Boulder, he immediately suspected the Ramseys. Although Douglas was limited by authorities on what evidence he could see, he was allowed in the house. He was briefed on the autopsy report, and he saw a photocopy of the so-called ransom note. And most importantly, he was given access to the Ramseys. And experience told him, look very closely at the parents. Douglas's 25 years of groundbreaking criminal profiling research with the FBI led to important breaks in dozens of major cases. He studied and interviewed scores of serial killers. He accurately profiled the Unabomber suspect years ago, and he was the inspiration for the character of Agent Jack Crawford in the film The Silence of the Lambs. Although the Boulder Police Department is releasing no information about the investigation, Douglas says it was clear to him that the Ramseys were the chief suspects when he arrived. So for Douglas, it was critically important to interview the parents.
How much time did you spend talking to Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey? About 4 or 5 hours.
For Douglas, that interview 2 weeks after Jon Benet was found murdered would prove to be crucial in forming his opinions, because he knew that whoever committed the crime had to have intimate knowledge of the Ramseys' $1 million home.
What struck me as really unusual is that the bedrooms, the family's mother and father's bedrooms, were so far away on that third floor that even if you weren't a sound sleeper, to have difficulty hearing any noise on the second floor because it is so far removed.
The Ramseys told Douglas that they all went to bed very early Christmas night because they were planning to fly to their other home in Michigan the next morning.
Mr. Ramsey gets up, takes a shower. The mother gets up to go downstairs to make some coffee, goes down the spiral staircase. And the last step, there's 3 pages of the letter. Starts reading it, doesn't know what it is, and then she starts screaming, and Mr. Ramsey comes down, and you know, the instructions are don't contact the FBI, don't contact the police.
But the police are called. They search the house, but don't check a small basement room. Hours later, a distraught John Ramsey goes to the basement and discovers his daughter's body.
And everyone hears him screaming, and upstairs, my God, my baby, and grabs a child, removes the duct tape, and then carries the child upstairs where they're trying to resuscitate the child.
The crime scene and Jon Benet's body were now contaminated by the family's desperate efforts to help the little girl.
Well, why don't we jump into it and get started? We have about 6 items this morning to go over with you. The first item 1, regarding DNA testing. Various items have been sent to Cellmark Diagnostics in Maryland for DNA testing. The items were delivered on Tuesday of this week. The testing by Cellmark could take up to 6 weeks for results. In addition, we have a statement from Cellmark which will be distributed at the end of this briefing. Item 2, handwriting samples. Boulder police are in receipt of a 3rd set of handwriting samples from Miss Patricia Ramsey. These items were collected by Boulder police on Friday, February 28th. Police had difficulty obtaining satisfactory samples because Miss Ramsey is reported to have been taking medication since December 26th. Item 3, based on the information Boulder police have to date, Boulder police are now able to eliminate John Andrew and Melinda Ramsey as potential suspects. Boulder detectives traveled to Roswell, Georgia back in February for the express purpose of collecting conclusive evidence that would allow us to eliminate John Andrew and Melinda from suspicion in this case. Upon arrival, we were informed that Jon B. Ramsey had retained attorney James Jenkins in Atlanta to represent Lucinda Johnson, Melinda, and John Andrew. Mr. Jenkins declined to allow his clients to speak with us. As a result, alternative sources of information had to be developed, which delayed our ability to publicly issue this information. John Andrew and Melinda are being publicly cleared of the involvement in this case to relieve them of stress caused by inappropriate speculation. If indeed people are looking into the background of employees of the Boulder Police Department, that would be entirely irrelevant to this investigation. As Police Chief Kobe has said many times, Boulder Police will not be distracted by outside issues.
Yes, sir. Is it yes or no? Are they or aren't they?
I don't know specifically if they are, but if this is occurring, it's entirely irrelevant to this investigation. Yes, ma'am.
Looking at the conclusions of Jon Benet's autopsy and knowing that child abuse just never happened in a vacuum, can you categorically say that there has never been a past report of child abuse from the Ramsey home?
Okay, your question puts me in an awkward position because some of the things that you said in your question are not accurate. So do you want to rephrase it?
Has Boulder Department of, I'm sorry, I don't know what you call it here, Social Services, has Boulder's Department of Social Services ever received a past report of child abuse at the Ramsey home?
Okay, I know you're from out of state, so maybe I should explain a little bit. The city is a separate jurisdiction from the county of Boulder. The Child Protection Division of Boulder County is not part of the city of Boulder, so it would be inappropriate for me to speak for that agency.
Past child abuse at the Ramsey home?
Okay, I don't understand the question specifically, so let's try it again.
Okay, since the Ramseys moved here from out of state, has any official law enforcement agency, any child protective service agency in this state gotten a report of suspected child abuse at their home?
Okay, I'm not going to respond to that question. Next question,
Can
please.
you categorically deny it?
Answer. Next question, please.
Charles.
What's the status, Kelvin, of the interview with the Ramseys?
A formal police interview with the parents of the victim has not been scheduled. I want to note that the lack of a formal interview with the parents of the victim has not slowed the investigation, which is active and ongoing. Yes, sir.
What can you say about their demand that they be interviewed jointly?
What I can tell you is that as we have articulated since the beginning of this case, we have a way that we conduct formal police interviews. Those items in the way we conduct formal interviews include that the parties be interviewed separately, that the interviews be conducted by Boulder police detectives at a time and a location conducive to a productive interview, that the interviews be video and or audio taped, and that the persons being interviewed may be represented by legal counsel, and police officers advise them of their legal rights, including their right not to talk to police and their right to exercise that right at any time. And finally, the fifth item that we add in any police formal interview, Charles, is that only the individual being interviewed, their legal counsel, and police be present in the room during the interview. Yes, ma'am.
Is District Attorney Alex Hunter any closer to hiring the private investigator?
There have been ongoing discussions with a number of possible candidates, and retired Deputy Chief Tom Haney, most recently of the Denver Police Department, is one of those candidates. To answer your question probably more specifically. Do you have a follow-up?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
You said that you guys released John Andrew and Melinda, or you released them off of the suspect list because of stress. Is anyone else do that courtesy?
That is the only announcement we have of that type today.
So no one else is released off the suspect list?
Why, for 10 weeks, you guys have said that nobody will be publicly excluded as suspects, and today you have said that John Andrew and Melinda will not be considered suspects. Why the change? Why suddenly have you decided we're going to name people specifically?
What we have said previously is that we are not going to get into a position where we are going to identify anyone as a possible suspect. What we have said, Phil, is that regarding suspects, is that we are going to identify a suspect when an arrest warrant is issued. We are not going to attempt to identify a suspect prior to that, Bill. We have been able to, at this point, eliminate, in this very specific situation, John, Andrew, and Melinda from suspicion in this case. Did you have a follow, Bill?
Well, I guess the question would be, you guys have, when we brought other names to the table in the past, the answer has been, we're not publicly discussing whether or not people are suspects. Today you have said, we've said we're not going to say these people are suspects. Why can't you do that with other people in the case?
Well, as you recall, on December 30th, we put out a statement that said that the adult siblings were out of town at the time of the incident. This is in follow-up to that statement that we issued on December 30th. We have not issued any other statements such as that. So it's incredibly consistent in our view that to follow up on a previous public statement.
You began with that. In clearing them, John, Andrew, and Melinda, you say they're out of town. Can you give us specifics to where they were and why they are cleared?
No, I cannot. Carol?
As far as Patsy Ramsey and the handwriting samples, you said she was incoherent the 26th. Which day?
I will read you item 2 again. Boulder police are in receipt of a third set of handwriting samples from Miss Patricia Ramsey. These items were collected by Boulder police on Friday, February 28th. Police had difficulty obtaining satisfactory samples because Miss Ramsey is reported to have been taking medication since December 26th.
So the reason you asked for a third was because what she wrote down might not have been what her normal handwriting is, because maybe she was under medication.
Well, I understand what you're saying. What I can tell you is that we, prior to this third set, have been unable to obtain a sample that's been satisfactory.
Thanks. I'm going to try again. Since the death of Jon Benet Ramsey, can you tell us whether or not the Department of Social Services here has visited the Ramsey home to determine the condition of the other minor child that's still there?
Attorney Burke Ramsey, there's no indication that he is in imminent danger. Did you have a follow?
Yes. Did they visit the Ramsey home?
My understanding is that the Boulder County Department of Social Services Child Protection Division has been consulted and were consulted early on in the investigation.
Homicide Detective Lou Smith had once stated that Boulder, Colorado was, and I quote, the most evil town I've ever encountered, end quote. And this was further highlighted by the fact that both Detective Steve Thomas and Linda Arndt were allegedly gifted with what some may consider a warning and others may consider a threat in the form of cats that were harmed with their inside fluids and entrails spread about their front porches and doors. It's unclear if any other detectives had received this eyes wide shut type message, but Bob Whitson, another early detective on the case, had his home targeted by a drive-by.
Inquirer has been talking about the latest clues and developments in this case. And Pam, I asked you how your sister felt about the coverage. You have some strong feelings about Mike Walker, do you not?
Well, certainly not personally. I've never met the gentleman, but I would like to make a blanket statement about really all of the coverage that has happened. And that would be that I find it hard to believe that reputable journalists who are professionally trained and schooled in this country fail to find critical and substantive facts in this case and report on that. Instead, what I know to be true is so oftentimes a piece or a corner of the table is pulled off and then an entire story woven around that, and the facts are just not true.
Well, the 911 call being digitally enhanced has been verified.
Well, that I cannot speak to. I was not there, but neither was the gentleman from the National Enquirer.
Oh, well, don't bet on it. But let me just tell you something. It's not just what we discover and what we say. You have to remember, you just had a detective who made over 250 investigative reports. Steve Thomas resigned from this case in absolute disgust. Here's a man who put his career on the line, took up his badge, slammed it down, and said, that's it. I am sick of this district attorney. He is a witness for the defense. Okay?
Well, let me... yes, ma'am.
I believe that we should all be thankful for issues of the Inquirer, because certainly the police department or the family is not very interested in bringing this to justice. This is a little girl who has long since been gone.
Let me make something clear. Look, I am a journalist, all right? I mean, the outcome, I would be just as happy to do a story saying, wow, Ramsey's completely innocent. I would love to do that story, okay? I would love to. What we feel, all of us, I think, are feeling about what you're saying is that you seem to resent the fact that people are asking questions about why a little girl is murdered and the parents will not just fully and freely come forward and answer any question.
So were any of the detectives reassigned, as was reported to news media? Or is it that anyone actually trying to investigate was heavily suggested not to proceed with their leads and findings? And this was why so many of the detectives and investigators not only ceased their employment from their specific departments, but had left law enforcement as a career altogether?
Alex Hunter, the district attorney who calls Thomas a tormented soul, urged caution with regard to Thomas's conclusions.
He didn't have the background and the sort of the depth of understanding that several of the other detectives did. I don't think detectives ought to be writing books.
All right, let me start with this. This is an ongoing investigation. It is still very much an open case. Was it appropriate for you to write this book now, and why?
Well, that's quite a fallacy that the district attorney is trying to continue to put upon the American public, that this is an ongoing active case. As a matter of fact, I would refer him just Friday. One of his top advisors in this case has acknowledged what many have known for a long time, that this is a cold case, that absent a confession on the part of a remorseful killer, this case is going absolutely nowhere.
Well, what about the charges that this is unethical for you to write this book right now?
Well, I would say that my tolerance finally ran out for the doublespeak and the hypocrisy inside government, and particularly inside the district attorney's office and the district attorney himself, who was not only shoveling case file information to the primary suspects in this case, but to the media as well. And this was government at its absolute worst. And finally, my tolerance was exhausted. And I urge you, read this book, and then you tell me that this was not a story that should have been told.
Specifically, what did Boulder police do wrong in the initial hours of this investigation?
Well, even the Boulder Police Department now concedes that on the 26th of December, in what everybody now can see is a patently bogus ransom note, it was treated as a kidnapping, and a crime scene was not secured. Witnesses and potential suspects were not separated and interviewed, and there were just a number of things that are Police Academy 101. And then beyond that, mistakes continued to be made, and then the DA's office got involved in the fray, and it went downhill from there. And if one steps back and takes a macro perspective of this case, I think this is not just me talking. The detectives involved in this case, ultimately the grand jury prosecutors, other law enforcement, were all in consensus that the right person and the right people were being targeted in this case, and in particular Patsy Ramsey. But as to your question, what evidence? There's a lot of evidence, but the strongest being the pen, the pad, the ransom note, and the handwriting.
We've highlighted the A's. What is so significant about these A's, these lowercase A's?
Well, taken by themselves, certainly an argument could be made either way. But what we found significant was that pre-homicide, Patsy Ramsey was inclined to make what we call these lowercase manuscript A's throughout her writing. And we noted that in the ransom note, this lowercase manuscript A was prevalent throughout. But post-homicide, after the Ramseys were wrongly given a copy of this ransom note, her use of that lowercase manuscript A dropped off the map, and she discontinued writing like that.
Well, even if Patsy Ramsey did write the note, is that enough to prove that she killed her daughter?
Well, I make the argument what happened in Boulder, Colorado was a sense that where did logic and common sense seem to go? I don't think it's that great a leap, absent some big conspiracy, that the writer of the note is involved in the killing of the child.
We are continuing our conversation with Steve Thomas, a former lead detective on the Jon Benet Ramsey murder investigation. Mr. Thomas has written a new book about this case, and if you would, Steve, please walk us through what you think happened on that night in December of 1996.
Well, in this case, the question I get all the time is from people, what do I think happened? And I offer a hypothesis in the book, 2 pages out of a 360-some-odd page book, as to one of the possible scenarios that I thought may have occurred. Certainly the detectives discussed a number of scenarios, but I think mine was consistent with the evidence as I knew it, and took a relatively simple explanation to explain Patsy Ramsey's involvement. And it's quite simple, really. I think there was some sort of explosive encounter late that night between mother and daughter, which resulted in the child being killed. And thus, by definition, an accidental death lacks motive. And then I think where the motive came in was in a cover-up that followed.
Now, you also talk about bedwetting perhaps being a problem that may have led Patsy Ramsey to eventually kill her daughter. Tell me about that.
Well, again, let's put it in context. I saw the Ramseys a moment ago, Patsy remarking how infrequent and what a small thing it was. But at least one of the witnesses that we spoke with said not only was it a problem, but it was a problem that had become habitual and nightly in the weeks and months prior to her death. And this isn't just me talking. Again, in this case, we consulted with highly esteemed pediatric experts who told me that one of the number one reasons that they saw in cases where parents killed children was a parental rage whose genesis was in bedwetting or toileting accident.
What's your take on John Ramsey? Do you think he really knows what happened?
Well, and again, I'm speculating here, but only he knows. And of course, he's vehemently denied any knowledge or participation. But again, I think the Ramseys know more than they have told authorities about what went on in the house that night.
Ramsey attorney Lynn Wood has said that your theory is, quote, fiction, and that he plans on taking legal action against you. Are you prepared for that?
Well, what I find remarkable is what I think is the hypocrisy. They took advantage of every constitutional right this country affords them throughout the legal process. And then their First Amendment right a month ago, they exercised and penned a book and named 3 people as the possible killer of their daughter. 3 people whom I believe are clearly innocent people, yet when I try to exercise that same First Amendment right, they point the cannons at me, and I have to challenge that.
If everything you say is true, why hasn't there been an indictment?
Probable cause was never the issue in this case. As a matter of fact, for 13 years as a police officer and a detective, I had never been involved in a case that I can remember in which we did not arrest on probable cause. But due to this case being legally manipulated to death, and all the politics and egos and behind the scenes that was going on, not only was an arrest not made, but the grand jury, who presumably saw that same probable cause that the police had early, through whatever process, it was determined that there was not enough there was not enough to take it to a criminal trial where beyond a reasonable doubt is the threshold.
Final question. On a personal note, do you miss being a detective, and would you ever do it again?
I miss the hell out of police work. Cops are the greatest people on earth. I love cops. But Boulder, Colorado has a seriously flawed criminal justice system. I don't miss being a cop in Colorado. I miss being a cop, but I work as a carpenter now, and that's good, honest work for me now.
Actually, I lied. I've got one more quick question. Do you think there will ever be an indictment in this case?
No, absolutely not. And again, the district attorney is misleading people if he suggests otherwise. Absent a confession in this case, absent a remorseful killer confessing, nobody's going to be charged in this case, and Alex Hunter knows that.
This next-level secrecy was not just some isolated circumstances in Boulder either. The Denver, Colorado airport was opened in February of 1995. Showcasing disturbing murals and secret society symbolism that may not be noticed by the untrained eye, including a Freemason time capsule installation on March 19, 1994, that's meant to remain sealed until 2094. Who knows what kind of secrets are embedded beneath this capstone? There's also an enormous blue horse sculpture called Lucifer.
We have breaking news this morning. Blucifer, the iconic blue Mustang at Denver International Airport, has been vandalized. DIA staff confirms orange paint was tagged on the side of the statue's legs. It is faint and hard to make out, and it was discovered last night around 8 o'clock. Crews are now trying to figure out how to remove the paint without damaging the statue. Denver police are investigating.
And a talking gargoyle that was added later for additional dramatic effect.
Just like Kirk, a little older, a little wiser, a little weirder. Well, as you know, Denver International has some strong conspiracy theories. So to make the airport experience a little more fun and keep with the theme for those traveling through DIA, the airport embraced the weirdness. A talking gargoyle dropped by to give travelers his 2 cents and got plenty of laughs.
That's a little too close for comfort, lady.
Oh, damn.
What, you never seen a talking gargoyle before? Welcome to Illuminati headquarters. I mean, Denver International Airport.
This is awesome.
Hello? Do I know you?
Are you hungry?
Oh, I'm starving. You got anything for me? Those flowers look delicious.
Oh, it's because of the conspiracy.
Oh, it's because of the conspiracy. Look at me. I'm a little know-it-all. Will you get back over here? I got a question about this conspiracy. You know, you can actually put the phone down and have a conversation with me. But no, I'm a millennial. I've got to post it. I've got to snap face it and Twitter book it.
You're such a sweet talker.
Will you take me back home with you?
Let's go. I have some space in my backpack.
Actually, I think you have too much baggage for me.
These elements have been the source of many different conspiracy theories, but have all been dismissed as if they're completely unfounded. Some may be, but the Freemason time capsule is certainly worth noting.
We just would truly love to, share the real, true meaning of this mural and just about our hope for peace and love despite the hatred that we all witness in the world, to somehow come together for the sake of our children.
My name is Leo Tanguma, and I'm a mural painter. When I was in the 5th grade in elementary school, I did some drawings on the blackboard about my classmates killing our town sheriff. So I got severely punished for that. But the reason I did that is because the sheriff in our hometown was a killer. He had killed, up to that point, 7 Mexican Americans, including 2 of my mom's cousins. And so later on, that was an attitude that I had, that I needed to see what's wrong in society and try and reflect it in my murals.
It wasn't until 2008 that a cousin told me they hate that mural. People hate that mural. They say you want 9/11 because of that figure of war. They say that in the Bible all these dirty animals are unclean. They say, why are you painting people in coffins? And, just on and on and on, where it became a terrible conspiracy that's actually worldwide now.
There's been conspiracy theories by many groups about the murals at DIA, and that these have been like wild accusations, idiotic accusations of people with terrible meanings and feelings towards the ideas that represented. For example, one minister, religious minister, called the murals satanic, and other such accusations that are terrible. So, but again, I think that they made me feel more assured about the ideas that I was trying to represent.
Yeah, I think rumors like that about the airport conspiracies and the mural conspiracies, they really seek to destroy the human connection, the human spirit. I want to create artwork that will bring us together so that we could see each other's human spirit and have that connection again.
It was reported by a man named Phil Schneider, who was a contractor at the time, that there was an elaborate tunnel system built beneath this airport, at least 8 levels deep, with a 4.5 square mile city and an 88.5 square mile base. He passed under suspicious circumstances after making this report.
Rather horrendous designs and mechanizations of our federal government structure that I feel directly imperiled not to tell anybody about, so that's why I'm here telling it. In doing so, I am breaking my security oaths. I am also guilty of breaking major federal law. How long I'll be able to do this, anybody's guess. However, I would like to mention this talk is going to be broken up into 4 main topics. And each of these topics will have some bearing on what you people are involved in, you patriot people, or even some of you people that aren't patriots that may be leaning in that way or considering it. I want you to know these United States are a beautiful place. I've traveled in over 70 countries, and I cannot remember any country that has the beauty as well as the magnificence of its people like these United States. Give you an overview of basically what I am. I started off, went through engineering school, which half of my schooling was in the field. I built up a reputation for being a geological engineer as well as a structural engineer with both military and aerospace applications. I have helped build 2 main concern bases within these United States that have some significance as far as what is it called the New World Order. Number 1 is Dulce, New Mexico. I was involved in 1979 in a horrendous firefight with alien human type, whatever you want to call them. And I was one of the survivors. I'm probably the only talking survivor you'll ever hear. 2 other survivors are under close guard somewhere in these United States. One is not in very good shape. He's living in Canada. So I'm about the only one around that knows the firefight, that knows all the detailed files of the entire operation. 66 Secret Service agents, FBI, and the like, Black Berets died in that firefight. I was there. Number 1, part of what I'm going to tell you is going to be very shocking. Part of what I'm going to tell you is probably going to be very unbelievable. So if instead of putting on your glasses, I'll ask you to put your skepticals on rather than your spectacles. But please feel free to do your own homework. I know the Freedom of Information Act isn't much to go on, but unfortunately it's basically the best we've got. Your local law library and your nearest law university is a good place to look for congressional records. So if one continues to do their homework, and one can be standing vigilant in regards to their country. I love the country that I'm living in more than I love my life. I would not be standing before you right now risking my life by telling you these things if I didn't believe it so. The first part of this talk is going to concern deep underground military bases and the black budget. Let me first start by emphasizing the black budget. The black budget is a secretive group, basically a secret budget. It garners 1/4 of the gross national product, the entire gross national product of these United States. Present, the gross national product is around $5 trillion. So 1/4 of that's about $1.25 trillion per year. At least 1.023 trillion, and I say at least, is used in black budget programs like deep underground military bases. Presently, there are 129 deep underground military bases in these United States. Is this our? No, this one doesn't work. Oh, this one too tall. Anyway, of these 129 bases, they've been building them day and night unceasingly since the early 40s. Some of them were built even earlier than that. These bases comprise These bases comprised basically of large cities underground. They're connected by high-speed monorail magneto-leviton trains that can go up to Mach 2. Books have been written, several books recently have been written about this activity, all of which is verifiable through bibliography. I think Al Bielek will, unfortunately, Al Bielek has my only copy is Al Bielek here, by the way? Al Bielek? Yes, please do. Richard Sauder's book, he's a PhD architect, and he's written, he alone also is risking his life by talking about this. He worked with a number of government agencies on deep underground military bases. Okay, there are 129 of these in the United States. In and around where you live, in Idaho, there are 11 of them. It's a very large number. The average depth of each base is roughly a mile deep. They are basic whole cities hauled out underground. There are somewhere between 2 2/3 cubic miles and 4 1/4 cubic miles hauled out underground. You might ask how this is done. Well, right now they have laser drilling machines that can drill a tunnel 7 miles in one day. Obviously, we the public guys have been with the done, but I thought about it. Well, unfortunately, I don't believe it.
In November of 1997, a man performing maintenance on an aircraft had supposedly saw roughly 120 children being loaded onto a plane going to Paris. When questioned, the woman accompanying them claimed to be working with social services. Although this situation cannot be confirmed, it isn't outside the realm of possibility. The Ramseys' own private investigator had confirmed there were at least 4 active child exploitation rings in Boulder at the time, and Paul Benassi had showed investigators a safe house in Buena Vista, Colorado, where he and other children were held. There were clear signs of children having been kept underneath the home in a makeshift tunnel.
In 1992, Benassi is released from prison and tells his story on the TV show America's Most Wanted. As part of the show, Benassi leads a film crew to an abandoned ranch in Colorado, where he claims Johnny Gosch and countless other boys were once held captive.
This is where they kept some of the kids hidden away underneath the house here. I almost couldn't do it to even go near the house because I got up there and the memories flooded back of the last time I was here and leaving here.
If you remember, we talked about Paul Benassi in part 1, and his connection to the Franklin conspiracy. It is who mentioned Michael Aquino, whose name keeps coming up in dark places in relation to crimes against children, including the Presidio Army-based daycare. We also briefly touched on the McMartin preschool case. The McMartin preschool children had spoken about a tunnel system and secret rooms beneath the facility, which is where they were brought to be harmed and or transported. It was reported to media and in court that no such tunnels or secret rooms existed. However, according to Dr. Gary Stickle, who led the archaeological investigation, they did exist. So it's hard to fully trust and believe the official narrative in these kinds of situations. That investigation unearthed not 1, but 2 tunnel complexes, as well as previously unrecognized structural features, which defied logical explanation. Both tunnel complexes conformed to locations and functional descriptions established by children's reports. One had been described as providing undetected access to an adjacent building on the east. The other provided outside access under the west wall of the building, and contained within it an enlarged cavernous artifact corresponding to the children's descriptions of a quote-unquote secret room. I'll scroll through this 13-page report so you can pause and read all the details for yourself, but it just goes to show that once again, it's likely certain details about such cases were sealed for reasons of national security, and therefore cannot be presented in court before a jury, which of course discredited the children's statements, and no real justice could ever be served.
It may be that there will be one or more findings of guilt. It may be, in other words, that the legal process produces the conclusion that some little children actually were sexually abused. But it is doubtful that anyone will conclude that the way this trial was handled and covered by the media reflects much credit on either U.S. journalism or the U.S. legal system. Innocent people have had their reputations smeared and their lives turned upside down. Very young children who may or may not have been abused have certainly been traumatized by endless hours of relentless examination and cross-examination in pretrial and courtroom hearings. Whatever else will be said about the McMartin case, it will never be cited as a proud example of our criminal justice system. Here's the background from Nightline correspondent James Walker.
This is the McMartin preschool where the sexual abuse allegedly took place. These pictures were taken in January 1984, just days before the school was closed. It is located in an upper middle-class suburb of Los Angeles called Manhattan Beach. What made this case so sensational, so gruesome, was the accusation that 41 youngsters over a 6-year period had not just been sexually molested, but had also been forced to participate in satanic rites and graphic pictures. There were also charges that to keep the children quiet, animals had been mutilated before their eyes. To add to the sensationalism, the 7 people arrested were not only pillars of the community, they were also responsible for the children's welfare. 3 generations of McMartins were arrested. Grandmother Virginia, daughter Peggy McMartin Bucky, her son Raymond Bucky, his sister Peggy Ann Bucky, as well as 3 teachers. At their arraignment in April 1984, the prosecutor said the defendants were so dangerous they should be jailed without bail. 5 of them were. The parents of the children were incensed.
I want them out of society forever. They should never, ever be allowed to be with other children or anybody else.
Although the Franklin conspiracy originated in Nebraska, and the Presidio and McMartin cases were in California, the same pattern of leniency and lack of justice could be seen in Colorado throughout the 80s and 90s as well. So there certainly was something fishy going on in Boulder, and Colorado as a whole at the time. In Part 3, we'll be looking closer at this historical pattern of Boulder dropping the ball on crimes against children, the lead suspects in the Jon Benet case, other possible associates, and the days leading up to the holiday tragedy. I'll also be going deeper into the Ramseys' questionable past, the unexpected loss of John's oldest daughter Beth, and the other darker angles of this case. In the meantime, you can join the Eyes Wide Open Telegram group, where I post news and updates relating to the great big elephant in the room. I also post bonus and other uncensored content on Patreon. Everything's free to all members, but paid members will have early access to some posts. If none of that tickles your fancy, but you still want more, you can also find me on Twitter and Substack. Everything's linked in the description. Lastly, but certainly not least, I'll be continuing my crusade for the common denominators of truth, so make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the flip side.